The following podcast contains spoilers, adult language, and maybe a season 2? Maybe?
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. The dead are coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, an all Walking Dead universe podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve. Bonjour.
Bonjour. And this is podcast episode 315. And tonight we're discussing the finale of season 1 of The Ones Who Live. The title of the episode is The Last Time. And every time I read or see that title, I keep wanting to do the One Last Time song from Hamilton. But I don't want to do that because I want our show to be listenable on YouTube and other countries. And it won't happen if I use a clip. One last time. Anyway.
You could pull the Rolling Stones song.
Oh, I could. It didn't come to mind right away. I don't know that tune, so it didn't,
This could be the last time. This could be the last time. Maybe the last time. I don't know. You never heard that song?
It doesn't ring a bell, so probably not. Yeah. All right.
Well, thanks for coming in, everybody.
Thanks. Music trivia with Diane and Steve. We'll see you next week.
Good night, everybody. Yeah.
So before we get into details, we usually talk just a real quick, like off the cuff, how we felt, first thoughts about the episode. I went last week, and so Steve, it's your turn this week. What were your sort of initial thoughts on episode 6?
It's funny because I almost said this last week when we got to the end of the episode of our review. And if you remember, there was no episode description when we recorded. All we had was the title. And yes. I almost said this last week because he had all these cute titles from Scott Gimple for all 5 of the episodes up till that point. And then this one comes up and it's The Last Time. And my initial thought was, is that a message to the fans? That basically it's Gimple and Andy and Denai, and they're basically saying, okay, this is it. All right. This is the last time we are ever going to play these characters. This is the last time you're ever going to see Rick and Michonne. So enjoy it because this is it. And I didn't, but that was kind of the thought I had. And then, of course, as I'm watching the episode, it's like slowly, but as it's going on, I'm like, oh, my God, this is the last time.
I was right.
Holy crap, yeah. So, no, I enjoyed this episode. I think my reaction to it is pretty much what everybody's reaction, or at least a lot of people that I saw online. I'm sure you're going to say similar thing, is that it felt awful rushed. Yeah. And we kind of were joking last week, when we were kind of speculating what do we think is going to happen. And one of the things I said is, kind of hard to wrap up a whole war against the CRM in 52 minutes. Well, they found a way. So, I think that's probably the biggest critique I'll take away from it. I mean, there's little things in there here and there that, we wrote down that we can, pick the nits on, particularly, the survivability of a grenade going off right next to you, or the survivability of having a, basically nuclear explosion go off right next to you and, everyone's fine. We can pick those to death, but I think the biggest, and I don't want to say complaint, but the biggest thing that's going to stand out is, wow, did they, they had a lot of heavy lifting and they got to it and it's all wrapped up. So,
yeah.
What did you think?
Lots of bows on this one. They tied them into nice tight little knots there. And we were talking sort of, offline before we started recording. I was not expecting them to be able to wrap this up either. When we came out of last week's episode, I was firmly convinced, I'm like, whatever happens in next week's episode, however the action or whatever, there will be, even if there isn't a definite season 2 sort of lead in, there'll be enough ambiguity that they could do a season 2 if they wanted to. Some of that, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they rejected that whole idea.
Yeah. Pretty wrapped up.
Yeah. Like I've seen people wrapped up in a noose that was less tight than this was. Okay. Yeah. So agreed. I really liked this episode. There was lots and lots of stuff I liked. There was this, I would say this was probably the most fan servicey episode out of the 6 because of the whole wrap up and everything. There were some things that made me go, huh? And is that physically possible? But lots of great action, lots of great scenes. I was on board for a lot of the fan servicey stuff. It was nice to see some of it. Overall, really liked it. I agree on the on the lightning fast wrap up. We're like,
oh boy.
How are we going to wrap this up? We're going to have they'll be in a helicopter and we're just going to do a voiceover.
That's it.
That's it.
That's all you got to do.
That's all you get. A little time stampy, time shifty voiceover. That's all you get. And I guess
you get the news guy like reading the latest news, the CRM, and that's it, baby.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Does it work? It works. It's really tight. It's really quick. I'd love to see some more CRM stuff. I don't honestly think that we're done with them. There's too many there's lots and lots and lots of tied up loose ends, but there are still a couple of danglers. I think CRM is part of it. Not necessarily anything nefarious, but I think that there's still some stuff they can mine from there. But overall, like you, I liked it. I'm not necessarily sure if they stuck the landing or if they just were like, look, my ankle is broken, but I'm going to stand here. And we're going to make this happen no matter what. Very Carrie Strug of it all.
It's going to be, I'm going to hold this position until I get my perfect score, and then I'm going to be wheeled to the hospital and have emergency surgery. Yes.
And again, entertaining AF was this episode. It was, explosions and betrayals and deaths and some fights, like some brutal fights, and just lots and lots of stuff, lots of information, lots of stuff to digest. But still, overall, really good episode. Really good, fast episode. But we got lots to talk about. Lots and lots and lots to talk about. So we got to get on to it. So let's do that. But before we get to those details, we've got to, no matter how big, no matter how small, we got to revisit that episode description, which there is one.
They came up with one. It's the same amount of words as last time, but yeah, they did.
It is. And I looked multiple places before we started recording. That's it. That's your description.
Yep.
No matter what you do.
Whatever you do. Yep.
So I'll let you take it away, because it definitely takes a whole extra person to prep and do all sorts of stuff for these, 9 words. Go for it, sir.
It's awesome. All right. Well, this week's series finale episode is being brought to you by...
The following motion picture has been rated MG for mostly Gimple. Mostly.
He's a waylaid father that's just looking for a hand.
Oh!
She's a single mom on the road that's only looking for a sword. Throw in a goofy friend that speaks with an accent so thick you'll have no idea what she's saying.
Rick, giving up doesn't mean Rick take me to decide you strength be something bigger.
What? And top it all off with a megalomaniac.
You see, Jack, we're gonna save all the people on the earth by killing all the people on the earth so they can be saved.
My name is Rick Grimes.
Shut up, Sawyer.
Throw them all into the zombie apocalypse, and you get the first great Zom rom-com of 2024. Scott M. Gimple's It's the Shit We Do.
Is this your box? What's in it?
It's the Shit We Do. Rated Z for zombie. Now showing at all Echelon briefings.
All right, so I mean, I'm gonna buy my tickets now.
Yeah, it's a movie I want to watch. I there's a lot of things that I like about it, including, just it's the shit we do. It's the shit we do.
It is.
All the shit we do.
I know. Just to hear Thorne talk, I think is worth it.
Yeah. It's great. It's great.
All right. Shut up, Sawyer. All right. So the episode description, let's get to that because that's going to take all of 2 seconds. Again, is episode 1.6 of The Ones Who Live, and the title is The Last Time. And the description we have is, get ready, people. Rick and Michonne have to perform a near impossible miracle. That's it. That's all you get.
It's short. I don't know that I'd call it short and sweet. But it is very descriptive because pretty much everything they accomplished was near impossible, and yet they did it.
And miraculous, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she brings the water, and then he brings the magic wand, and then, of course, they turn it into wine, and there's your miracle. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some crazy miraculous crap there. So before we get into our individual moments of the episode, let's talk a little bit about who the writers and the director were.
Mm-hmm.
I see we've got some writers that we've seen before.
We pretty much everybody here we've seen before. Yes. It's. I know you're going to be shocked, everyone, but one of the writers, there's 2 writers this week, and one of them was Scott Gimple. Hey, there's who knew, right?
Who would have thought it?
Right, who would have thought? So yeah, Scott Gimple, and then another one of the kind of veteran Walking Dead writers that was in the main show's writing room for a long time is a gal named Channing Powell, which we've talked about a bunch on this show. They co-wrote this episode, and of course we know everything we need to know about Mr. Gimple, so I won't waste any more time on him. And then Channing Powell, she wrote 18 episodes of the main show between seasons 4 and seasons 9, which again is right during the Gimple era. And then she also wrote 2 episodes of Fear the Walking Dead from season 6, so yuck. And then she also wrote 2 episodes of the Tales of the Walking Dead. So she did 2 of those. And then she ended up writing 2 episodes of The Ones Who Live. She wrote episode 1.2, Gone, way back when, which was, hard to believe it was 5 weeks ago, but it was. And then this one, The Last Time, with Scott. So that is our 2 writers, and then our director is, of course, the same director we had last week, and that's Mr. Michael Satrazemis. Yes. And so they did bring in a heavy hitter. I know we kind of were hoping that maybe Greg Nicotero would have directed this episode, but that apparently was he apparently was unavailable. So they instead got Satrazemis to do episodes 5 and 6, and we talked about him last time. He directed 17 episodes of the main show between seasons 4 and 10. He's directed 23 episodes of Fear between seasons 4 and 8. And he ended up directing 3 episodes he also directed 3 episodes of Tales of the Walking Dead. And then he directed the 2 episodes of The Ones Who Live, which was 1.5 last week, Become, and 1.6, which is The Last Time. So that is your writer and your director.
So I really liked the sort of cold open where it was, a little bow, little chicka, and a little wow wow, bow chicka wow wow.
Oh yeah.
But the way they sort of panned across like all of their prep stuff,
Mhm.
you know, like the clothes and the stuff. And, you know, you made a good point. The sewing kit, which I thought was a great addition. It showed like we're making this happen, you know, we're making it, you know, they're showing that they needed to do some work before they actually went there.
Yeah.
So we know there's a little bit of a time lapse between their decision, we're going to go to the Cascadia place, and then we're gonna do X, we're gonna do Y, we're gonna do Z, you know. But in order to do that, for it to go appropriately, we need to do these preparation things, and they're doing that. I mean, they're doing other things too, but you know.
Really? What are they doing?
Well, he put a ring on her finger.
Did he?
Yeah.
So she can no longer be part of all the single ladies?
I don't know.
Okay.
He put a ring on it.
He did.
He liked it. He put a ring on it.
Mm-hmm. That, you know, and that
I'm
basically
pretty
means
sure
that,
it wasn't the only thing that he was giving to her at that moment.
What do you mean?
But I think he was giving her some, you know, special mommy daddy love.
So when you're saying when mommy and daddy are wrestling, it's just because of her bad back?
Yeah, right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. It was real interesting when the camera kind of pushes in over the table, and of course they're, you know, on lying in the bed after the table. But when you're going over, you see that they've got a very kind of crude hand-drawn map of the Cascadia base, and it points out the barracks, and it points out where Jadis's room is. And then, I thought that was really cool that, you know, last week, Jadis, who has got to be 5 inches taller than Michonne, she showed up and she was wearing one of those, you know, the CRM military outfits, but it has all the red trim on it.
Yep.
That means it's part of that reactionary force, which is, you know, kind of, as we learn, that's like different from the regular army. It's, you know, it's almost like, you know, it's like in, you know, the Germans had the regular army, and then they had the SS, which were like different guys that were much meaner and did all kinds of war crimes and stuff. Kind of the same vibe here, you know, that this reactionary force is the ones that would, you know, they're the ones that blew up Omaha. They're the ones that, you know, probably dropped the bombs on Michonne's group. And, you know, it's different, right? Rick was part of the regular army, and this is it. But anyway, everybody at the Cascadia base is going to be in those uniforms. So if Michonne's going to try and, you know, walk around, she needs to look like them. So they clearly, you know, were like tailoring and altering Jadis's outfit so it'll at least kind of fit her. And of course, you know, I mean, it totally fit her perfectly because it's a TV show. But I thought that was a really cool, real quick scene to see that. And like you said, they didn't just jump in the helicopter at the end of episode 5 and go, let's go wrap this up. You know, I mean, they put some thought into it and spent some time to get ready and to get busy, but also to get ready, you know, so that it wasn't just willy-nilly. I mean, they had a real specific plan of what they wanted to do. And like you said, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because like when you think about at the end, when, you know, everything's solved with a voiceover, it's interesting that in the front end of the episode that they took the time to show like some just a couple of visual details and visual cues like that show that prep time and effort was put into. It wasn't the usual Rick, let's just run in and get it done. Like, you know, his plans which usually fall apart.
Right.
So, yeah.
This was not a satellite station raid, right?
No.
I'll tell you.
No. And, you know, other than like a small hiccup, I'd say it pretty much went off the way they thought it was going to a degree. I'm not sure they were planning on the explosion portion.
No. Oh, no.
But they sort of had to pivot while they were there based on the intel they both got like at like the same time. But it's
they both deviated from the plan pretty massively, because I'm pretty sure that he was not planning to kill Beale, And
No.
she was not planning on, coming up with the, crazy grenade blow up the bombs plan until after the briefing. So, and, and basically after they both got the briefing in different ways, that's when the plan altered and it altered,
totally
so on. But I agree. I thought that was great. And also you do get a little bit of voiceover at the beginning as well. You hear Rick, talking about, I really tried and all that. And then you also hear people that they've met the whole season. You hear Nat have a line in there.
Yeah.
About I'm really good at blowing shit up, and now I learned how to, repair stuff or whatever he said. And you hear Michonne say stuff, and then you hear even Thorne has a line in there. I mean, and Okafor, and so kind of it's a way to kind of remind everybody of kind of what's happening without going the flashback route, because Gimple had the flashback route all planned for everything else in the episode. So
right. And it was good too, because it was like you said, it was a reminder of what had happened, but also it's a reminder of what happened, but you have to also see that these people have inspired and affected them to be able to, like, we're fighting for us, but we're fighting for these people too. Okafor believed, and Nat, even though he was, I don't think we're going to succeed, but I'm going to do this anyway because it's the right thing to do. Like that kind of feeling, that vibe is what needed to go into their little mission. It makes it feel a little like, I'm not sure these guys are going to make it out alive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It gives you that sort of feeling of like, this is what we should be doing, but there's still a little bit of dread there since most of the people got these, inspirational things from are all dead now. So, it doesn't bode well. Like, I really love this guy. He's very inspirational. He's dead, but
he didn't make it. But
he didn't quite make it.
Yeah. Actually, one of them killed the other one, if you think about it.
Yeah, it's true. It's totally true. So they did, craft a plan. Their plan sort of, starts off a little slow and then picks up, especially with the tension. So Rick does the thing where he, I don't want to say turns himself in, but he basically shows up at the gate, arms raised, and then starts his version of the events.
My name is Rick Grimes.
I was
you
injured.
Probably think I'm dead.
Yeah. I was injured. I couldn't get to people, blah, 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 whatever that story was, he spun. And then, Michonne has her own little thing that she's doing, and she sort of, she ends up like breaching the building by jumping a tree and jumping onto the roof of this building, but also distracting the guard with a walker is there. So there's some good serendipitous action going on there. But I did have the thought too, mostly about Michonne, but then once like Rick and like Thorne are separated and he's off doing his own thing, pre and post Beale meeting, it's like these two are just walking around this place. And they've got the outfit on, so they shouldn't be questioned in theory. Right. But they're also not. Usually, when people are doing something, they're with like a small group, 2 or 3 people total, working on like a project or a thing. You don't see a lot of people walking around like single, like by themselves, like they are. But they are, and nobody stops, questions them, or anything like that. And I mean, a lot of that has to do with, if you were chosen for this assignment, you're trustworthy and all of that stuff. But still, it still felt like a little bit of, especially when like Michonne is literally breaking in, and then when she leaves too, like goes out that same, window or whatever it was. I'm like, okay, once is really good luck to be able to make it in with no one seeing you. But to do it twice in the same area, I don't know. It felt very like nobody's looking, nobody's watching.
Yeah. Well, again, Jadis is dead, right? So there's nobody that is concerned that something could be going wrong.
Yeah.
And like you said, these guys are, they're read in by Beale. So, and as he points out to Rick, Rick's the first person like Rick that's ever gotten to this point. So,
yeah,
everybody,
they're all bees, pretty much. Yeah.
So, but I mean, there were still people by themselves. I mean, the two people that they kill are by themselves. Michonne kills the person that delivers the envelope to Jadis's room, and Rick kills the guy in the elevator. So those are people that are moving around by themselves. So it's not completely far-fetched, but you're right. I mean, they do kind of just have this sort of magic of, no one ever is like, soldier, what are you doing? And then they have to be like, I was told to go do that. Well, you're in the wrong. You know what I mean? They never had any of that at all. And it's just sort of like, I guess you have to go with the idea that, I'm sure you've heard this, that, if you act like you belong somewhere, lots of times people will let you stay type thing.
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to sneak into like the VIP area of a club or something and you don't have the pass, it's like, no, you just got to walk right past them. Like, damn it, I'm supposed to be in there, and they'll buy it. It never worked for me. They're always like, dude, get the hell out. But still,
there's this.
Yeah.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, it's sort of like if you have that kind of that mojo, that you're giving off that vibe of like, don't fucking talk to me. I am supposed to be here. I got stuff to do. People will leave you be.
There's a really great movie, underrated, I would say, from the early 90s called The Paper, directed by Ron Howard. Michael Keaton's in it. It's really, really great. I love that movie. But he has Michael Keaton, this scene where he's trying to find out stuff from some cops at a police station, and it's him and Randy Quaid in the scene, and Randy Quaid's like, I couldn't get past the guy at the front, and he's like, did you wear your press badge? And he's like, yeah. He's like, don't wear your press badge.
Yeah.
So he's like, how are we going to get in there? And he grabs like a clipboard and puts some papers on it. And he's like, a clipboard and a positive attitude will get you into any building. And they literally did. They walked in, they walked right past. He pointed at him like, hey, how you doing? And walked right past.
Yeah.
And it was his whole demeanor. He just walked right past that front desk at the police station and walked down the hallway. And he did it with such a feeling like, well, only someone who's supposed to be here would have that sort of, like you're saying, like that mojo, that feeling.
That swagger.
It worked.
Yeah.
It totally worked.
So I'm sure that while we didn't see, Rick tell Michonne that, I'm sure that was expressed, right? That he's just like, you know what? Right. Yeah. I mean, just, again, like act like you belong type thing. And so
exactly.
They did. And I mean, like Michonne, even eventually, she's kind of like walking around angry. And still, no one is like, hey, what's wrong with that soldier? You know what I mean?
Yeah, during those moments, that's what made me most tense, actually, was those moments where you're like, how are they just walking around? And she's like, when she left that little briefing area and whatever, and the whole, like, the stuffed bunny, and she's having these moments, she's emotionally, I was totally expecting her to just, like, haul off and like punch someone, or you know what I mean? And the same thing with Rick too, like they're in these moments where they have to stay reserved and sort of, like we're not going to have an outburst of emotion, but you can see like in Michonne's eyes during the briefing or whatever.
She's like literally almost crying, And plus the fact like that, when she goes into the briefing, the over the loudspeaker, they're like, these briefings are mandatory. And she like gets up and leaves before it's over. And I'm like, what if somebody's like, soldier, where are you going? It's not over yet.
I was in my head. I was like, someone stops you. Gotta go to the bathroom. Gotta go to the bathroom. Gotta go to the bathroom. That's your excuse, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry. I gotta pee. Oh, well, you go right ahead. You know what I mean? It's just like.
Yeah, it's that was stressful. It's funny too, because it's like I wrote the note down because I thought it was funny that they could walk anywhere, but then like now that we've been talking about it more, it was funny at first that they could walk anywhere, but then by the time they were finished, it was stressful that they were walking everywhere. Nobody's stopping them, and you're like, someone's gonna call them on their bullshit eventually.
Well, and like Rick's, after a while, Rick's pushing the box on wheels with like Beale's reanimated corpse in it.
Yeah.
And you know, and we'll get to the elevator scene later with the blood dripping. I was afraid like Beale's gonna start like banging on the inside of the box, you know, to be like, what's in there? Nothing. You know. So yeah, I mean, it's like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so anyway, so to get back to where we were, so Michonne gets her way into the building. You know, Rick is sort of simultaneously, Rick is talking to Thorne, you know, telling her a little bit about like what happened. And you get this feeling too, like, because before he was, you know, that she's not on the, I guess you could call it the Okafor side anymore. She was having problems like before, like when she was, you know, she almost shot Michonne, and you know, she was struggling a lot. So I was really, I don't want to say hopeful, but I was expecting, you know, Rick to be like, hey, I'm back, and you know, we got to keep doing it. Okafor, so, you know, he used Okafor as like a code word almost. And she was like, we got to forget about what he said. And as soon as she said that, I was like, well, yeah, Thorne's not on team Rick and Michonne. She's on her own team. She's definitely just trying to like stay alive, stay out of trouble, you know, like not wanting to like stir things up. That's just not what she wants to do anymore. So I thought that was interesting, that it was very clear, like it has seemed like she was struggling with it in like the previous episode, etc. But she like comes right out and says to Rick, you know, like we need to forget about Okafor and move on.
I mean, yeah.
And move on, and are you with me? And in the moment, he's, you know, he's a good boy, and he's like, I'm with you. You know, I want you to show me what that world without Okafor is basically what he said.
Yeah, yeah, he does. Yeah, because he's getting ready to go to the briefing. Yeah, she when they first meet, you know, she's like, you know, I know you had your debrief, but like, tell me what happened. And he spins the yarn of, you know, they were flying low to get under the turbulence, and the chopper get hit by lightning, and then he says, you know, Bethune threw me out of the chopper. And then I thought it was really, he made a point of going, she didn't make it, but I did. You know, it's like, she's totally dead. No reason to go look for her at all. And then he said, you know, it's because of you vouching for her that I'm alive. And then Thorne's like, no, it was you bringing her in that you're alive. And then he goes, well, let's just, you know, chalk it up to Okafor. And that's when she kind of gives him the look like, yeah, no, let's not do that.
Yeah.
And you're like, uh-oh. And then later on, after the briefing, when she has her little speech about, you know, you can still give up and become some part of something greater, that's when you're like, oh, you're on Team Beale now, aren't you?
Yeah. So, she switched sides.
She did,
sadly.
yeah. And that was kind of what we weren't sure of in previous episodes, because she was, you know, like you said, she almost shoots Michonne, and she's, you know, not at all acting like a conspirator and following the Okafor plan. She's kind of resistant to it. And by this point, yeah, she's completely, like you said, she's no longer, we don't talk about Okafor anymore. You know, he was wrong.
We don't speak that name.
Yeah. So, but it was funny because right away, because that scene happens right at the beginning, and you're kind of like, uh-oh, there's a problem.
Yeah, because I bet he was sort of, in the back of his mind, was wondering, you know, they were probably had a little space in the plan for like, okay, and if we can get Thorne on board, we can slot her in this way, A, B, or C. You know what I mean?
And also, you know, we can take her with us, you know, and she can, know, she can come to Alexandria and live without, you know what I mean? Like they would have made a place for her.
Oh, yeah.
In their world, if she was on Team Rick and Michonne. It's just, you know, as he found out, as we all found out, oops, though, you can throw that page of the plan away because it ain't happening. So
not happening. Not at all. So that's happening. Meanwhile, you know, Michonne is, you know, walking around willy-nilly, but she finds Jadis's apartment. And picks that lock like a pro, goodness. Man.
Yeah.
Although those are to be fair, those like knob locks like that on the handles like that, those are like I can pick one of those.
Can you really?
Yes, because we have one on our guest room door, and our nephew was staying one time, and he locked it from the inside, and we couldn't get in. And I was like, "Give me what did we use? A bobby pin or something stupid?" And it was like so simple. We're like, click, click. We're like, "Well done, little idiot. We got in here." So anyway, but yes, easy to pick, but it's not so much that she does it easily. She does it so quick because she's got to make it look like I've got a key and I'm getting right in here. Like I'm not struggling. And it was like literally zip, dip, dip, dip. And she goes right inside. And oh my God, the apartment.
I know.
The paintings. Oh my God.
So many pictures of Gabriel.
Yes. I really want to go back and just like pause. I didn't get a chance to with Easter and everything. I only got to watch the episode once, which is sad. I know.
It's very sad.
But I do want to watch again because I want to get to that scene and pause a little bit because there is a lot of Gabriel there, but I think there's some more of like other people. There's a picture of Beale
There's a really good
there.
picture of Beale, a watercolor of Beale. There's several like charcoal or chalk drawings of Gabriel, some with his hat, some without him wearing a hat. Yeah, it's you should definitely, because I kind of freeze framed it a little and kind of looked around, and yeah, it was real impressive. You know, that she's clearly Anne the artist is not completely gone from Jadis, because there was a lot of art in that room.
Especially if you think about it too, like this is a temporary assignment, That's not like her home. They were only there at that Cascadia. They've only been there for like a short period of time, you would say. I would assume that Jadis probably moves from base to base, so she's a little more moves around, but
yeah, but she told Rick that she was being assigned to the Cascadia base to help get it ready with him. So I think she'd been there for a considerable amount of time, and my thought was she'd been there long enough that all that artwork she had done there. It's not like she brought it with her, she just created it. So I would think she's been there a couple months at least.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot of stuff.
Is.
So it just goes to show, like, if it's something that, makes her calm or makes her feel better about herself, like she definitely was needing to do a lot of it. That's for sure. It was her way to sort of express. I loved that they did that. They didn't need to, because I felt like Jadis was wrapped up kind of nicely and all of the Gabriel stuff really helped, but this was like an extra layer that they just added that it gave such a lovely like little cherry on top to Jadis's character. She like we said, she had a really great end in the last episode, such a great character. She's a great foe for Rick and Michonne. She was a bad guy and then not a bad guy. And then, so she just had so many different layers. But I really, really loved that they took the time to do this kind of extra little bit. And oh my God, the cat.
Yes. Hey, there's the damn wire cat, right?
It's so perfect. It's so perfect. It's and again, this is another one of those, it's one of those things that happened in this episode that felt a little fan servicey,
Oh God, yeah.
For sure. Why is it there? How did it get there? How did this even happen? But it's there and it's perfect. And the fact that Michonne knew as soon as she saw it, that's where she put the thing. It's because she would put it in the thing that had any kind of connection to her and Rick. I didn't even see it at first. The way she was looking, there were those pictures, and I thought it was going to be like behind one of the pictures or something like that. So when Michonne starts heading towards there, I was looking at the pictures on the wall, and then when you see her put her hand out and I looked down, I'm like, oh my God, it's the cat sculpture. I like nearly shit my pants. Like, how did that happen? It was great.
Well,
what a great little extra.
She made Rick give it back to her.
She did, and I just think it's sometimes Gimple is okay. He's okay.
What I think is amazing with Mr. Gimple is that, I mean, think about it. Like 12 years ago, when he first wrote that idea of that cat, he knew that 12 years later, on a totally different show,
we're going to see
with
that
Rick
cat
and
again.
Michonne, that cat's coming back. I mean, that is talent.
Those are the kind of things that I like. Like, you don't have to have like character arcs tie up in neat bows like the way we did in this episode, but those little Easter eggy things, like if you had never watched, I don't know how you would watch this show without having watched the main series, but I mean, like, maybe you skipped a season or two, maybe you didn't really like Jada, so you skipped her episodes or whatever. If you didn't know about the little cat thing, it doesn't add anything to the episode.
No.
But it's simply there as like an extra layer that those are those kinds of things that I love, absolutely love. I think they're the fan service stuff that I cheer, that I sit up and cheer when I see them. They're great.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, but then God forbid, somebody into the door and no, and she, oh my God, that was brutal. She like totally garroted her.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. She had like the wire and everything. It was,
I thought at first that she was just going to hide behind the door and see if that person just kind of looked in and then closed the door.
Yeah. I totally thought the same thing.
But then when she like, it's funny because that whole bit in the room, I thought Michonne acted very un-Michonne. She was nervous and jittery, and I'm like, come on, you're Michonne. What the hell are you doing? Calm down. And she destroys the room looking for the evidence, which at first I'm like, really? That's your plan? So that when somebody finally comes in there when you guys are gone, and this is before, they decide to blow everybody up, they'll see that Jadis's room has been tossed. That won't raise suspicion, maybe. I mean, it's like, really? You don't want to. But then she finds the evidence, and what's the first thing she does? She like tears it all into little pieces. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
These pieces. Yeah.
No. Continue. I'll jump in.
I was just saying, these are the crazy people that will like take those pieces of paper and tape them back together and read the note. It's, so my thought was like, either you take it with you, you put it in your pocket, or you use Nat's lighter and you burn it right there in a garbage can, so it's gone, right? It's one or the other. But she tears it up into little pieces, and then thank God she's like, oh wait, I shouldn't do that. And then she's like trying to pick them all up, and I'm like, what if you miss one and it says Rick's name on it? Like, that's, what I mean? It's like, so I thought she was very un-Michonne. And then when the woman comes in with that opens the door, she like totally gives away the element of surprise by like closing the door suddenly, which startles the woman. She turns around, you know what I mean? It's like she could have just walked up behind her and put the garrote around her and killed her without any drama at all, So I thought she was very un-Michonne in those scenes. What did you think?
I was gonna say that like when she was tearing it up, it felt like a very emotional response, which Michonne, she has to really be pushed to respond emotionally to something the way that happened. She's much more logical and pragmatic about stuff. I mean, she is still an emotional being, and stuff upsets her. But in that moment, making that, seeing the betrayal of Jadis and seeing, she's scanning over the page, and, the camera, stops at little, Rick and his wife Michonne, and then it, it cues in on like just one word. It says Alexandria. It says whatever. So it really made it real. It made it very real that Jadis was willing to sell out all of Alexandria because of all of this, and it just angered her. It angered her so much. You could see it. Like, she was so incensed while she was tearing it up. She just wanted to make it like disappear and not be anywhere. And I had all of those same feelings while she was doing it that you did. And I was like, the pieces of, someone's gonna bring those and like they're gonna glue them together, and this is not good. It's not good. It's not good.
Mm-hmm.
And then she started to pick them up, and I'm like, that's good. But she's like stuff them in her pants pocket or something, and I'm like,
I know.
there's no way in hell that she got all of those pieces
Right.
up off the floor.
So that's what I'm like the one little clump that she doesn't get will say, Rick and Alexandria on it, right? You know what I mean? It's just like, no, what are you doing?
Without question.
Yeah.
And with the woman that came in, I had exactly the same thought. The way she was standing, I was like, oh, she's just going to stand behind the door. We're going to have that tense moment where the girl comes in and she'll look around and she won't see anything out of place, and she'll just turn around.
No, she's going to look around and go, wow, Jadis is a pig. I mean, Jesus, what a slob.
Yeah,
clean your shit up, lady.
Yeah.
I mean, she tossed the room. I mean, the books were off the bookshelf. She was going through the clothes in the drawer. I mean, she did. She tossed that room, and
oh
so,
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But it's funny that I had the same thought as you too. But I was like, she's just gonna let her come in and then leave, because it's the least disruptive thing to do. Is to, just let her leave, and then no one will know that Michonne was in there or whatever. But as soon as she like jumped on her, I was like, oh, this is going to be bad. And, oh my God, it was brutal.
Yep.
Brutal. But hey, Michonne has to get home to her babies, and nothing's going to get in the way of it.
And at that point, they only had like 36 minutes left in the episode. So it's like no time to talk.
Got to wrap this up, people.
That's
Let's
right,
go. Let's
people.
go.
We have a schedule to keep, so let's move it.
Yeah. So I had to make a note about, that's how she took him out. And what's interesting too is I don't think, because Jadis is an artist, right? And I only know this because of hanging around with other artists. The garrote that Michonne used, which she grabbed, it wasn't a true like garrote. It's an artist's. It looked like it was a wire that artists used to cut clay.
Yeah.
So it was even more brutal than you think it was, because it wasn't just like a wire and she strangled them like a telephone wire or something like that. No, this was a thin wire that likely sliced right through that person's throat and killed them that way.
Right.
And I knew that, and I'm like, gross.
Yep. Oh yeah, the traditional garrote doesn't. You don't die of strangulation. You die either you bleed to death because your jugular's severed or because your windpipe is severed.
Yeah,
because that wire goes right through your neck, goes all the way to the bone. I mean, it's got to be nasty. There's no doubt.
Gross. Yeah. So we end up pivoting from there to Rick getting his echelon briefing.
Yes, we do.
And I mean, obviously, you had an idea of where this was going. When Thorne was like, it'll change you, and da-da-da-da. And we already know what they've done. We didn't need to hear the echelon briefing to know that they take matters into their own hands, that they get rid of people that they feel are eventually going to be a drain on their resources because of what they did to Omaha. And we knew that. So I wasn't very surprised by anything that Beale said to him. How about you? Like, was any of that, like, did any of that feel new? I think the only thing to me that felt new was the portion that Michonne saw, which is, we're going to do this thing, but we want to save some of the children.
That part didn't surprise me at all, because that was straight out of World Beyond. That they wanted the professor's kids because, they were convinced that they were super geniuses, right? Remember?
Right. Yeah.
And so that didn't surprise me as much, that they would want to target some of the children from Portland, that they, again, because, he says they've got spies in the school system, which are monitoring these kids and figuring out which ones are the good ones and which ones are the dipshits, and, picking which ones that have potential to help them in the future. So that didn't bother me. The only thing that surprised me or that made me go, ooh, was the idea that after the Portland attack, they were basically going to go and dissolve the civil government and take over everything.
Yeah.
And he was basically going to be the guy, that's in charge of everything. And so that was sort of the, it's not just we're going to go wipe out everybody in Portland and kill all those people. It's we're going to, kind of cement the CRM's control over the Civic Republic. And, there is no more like, there's no more like government of non-military people left. It's just going to be a military dictatorship. That I thought was kind of the surprising. I didn't know that he was planning to do that. So
yeah, I liked the way he sort of told the story of the Pittsburgh versus Philadelphia thing that he went through, and how he made the choice between the one versus the other based on, they had to choose one and they didn't have enough resources for everybody and you know what I mean? So a choice had to be made and he made the tough choice and he had more, personal attachment to this one area, but he made the military choice to, wipe out that area, instead of the other. So it was interesting how they personalized it for him and made it so that he, had to sort of make that crazy, sort of psychotic choice that he did.
Well, I mean, it's just showing you his mindset that, back during the second Civil War, as he puts it, he had to sacrifice his hometown. So, and as he says, it's everybody he ever knew, everybody he ever liked, everybody he ever hated, everybody, they're all gone. But it was the military, necessity. He had to do it. And he's now applying that logic to everybody else. Yeah. And going like, hey, Portland, it's a thriving town. It's got thousands of people, but you know what? We can't sustain them. We've done the models. It doesn't work. So we're going to kill them all. It's going to be horrible and people are going to feel bad about it, but we got to do it, Yeah. Yeah. So it was a real, and Terry Quinn's great. So he really sold it and made it, great. And I like the idea that, he starts off the conversation by asking Rick, like, what's the worst thing you ever had to do to protect somebody? And Rick talked, we see like, it's real cool. And I thought,
it's like a slideshow,
right? Rick kind of he kind of looks up to the right as he's accessing the memory, and we see him kill Shane. We see, the governor. We see, a whole bunch of like flashbacky moments, and then we see him kill the Dibs guy, and bite out his throat. And he says that it's like I killed someone with my teeth, like they do. And Beale's like, wow, that's awful, and he's like, had to do it.
And he even says too, is like not what I was expecting to hear. And I'm like, I don't think that's what anybody's expecting.
Yeah, right. And so, but then Beale kind of, he asks him like, who's the most important person you lost? And I mean, I got to be honest, people, I really thought he was going to say his wife, right?
Yeah.
Right? Remember Lori? Hello. But no, he goes with Carl and says him. And and then he points out that Carl was the person that he saved when he used his teeth to kill that guy. And then Beale brings it back and kind of tries to equate his decision to destroy Pittsburgh with Rick's decision to, kill the Dibs guy in kind of the heat of the moment with the only thing he had, which was his teeth.
Yeah.
And it kind of works, but not really. Because, Rick is like down in it, right? And he's, in the mud, fighting for his life. And Beale is like, sitting in the command center issuing the orders over the radio. It's a totally different. And that's why you remember before we even get to the briefing, Rick goes out and Beale is like standing by the fence with one of the spears. And he's like killing the ghouls that come up to the spear. And he's like, I never had to do this.
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
Yeah, and he's like, I never did my 6 for citizenship. He goes, because I'm not a citizen. And then, he's it's almost like he's saying, look, I didn't like fight the same struggle and the same battles that you did to get here, but we're both here, and
Right.
Terry O'Quinn, he, is a master, and the way he delivered that, it's great because it starts out and it seems kind of rational.
Right.
But then as the briefing's going along, it's just like veering more and more into crazy town.
Yeah. The best psychotics are really good at showing you this makes sense, right? It makes total sense, right?
Total sense, right? Yeah, I'm not crazy. No,
Yeah.
you are. Yeah, you are.
And for a second, you're like, well, I mean, you have to, and then you're like, no, crazy pants, no.
Yeah, there is that moment in there when Beale's kind of laid all the cards on the table and talked about what's going to happen, and they're going to wipe out Portland, and they're going to take over the Civic Republic, and they're going to do all this stuff, and he tells Rick that Rick can go get whoever he wants and bring them to the CRM, and they can live there. Right? Any community, friends, lover. He's like, I don't care, whoever you want, just bring. And then he pulls out the sword and he's like, all you got to do is swear on the sword. And it's at that moment that Rick kind of gives him that look, and it's just like Rick is like, yeah, you're flipping nuts.
Yeah. I loved, and the use of the flashbacks too was there was a lot of, there was so many of them.
Oh yeah.
But the little moments here and there, it sort of aided in the whole, like, this is a quick story and we're getting right to it. They're basically like, as soon as he's like, swear on the sword, and then when it shows the scene where Okafor is like, whatever you do, don't swear by the sword. And I'm like, okay.
Well, so he says something like, swear on the sword, but don't let it take. Don't, like, basically, like, just say you will, but it doesn't mean anything.
Don't.
Yeah,
exactly. But I thought I was very interested in that moment about how Beale made the appeal for, hey, whatever community it is that you were trying to get to, what if we brought them here?
Yeah.
Like almost as a, please don't run away. I need people like you.
Yeah.
If we brought your people here, would it make you, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you can sense that he still doesn't think that he has Rick 100%, no matter what Rick has said out loud. So it thought it was interesting that in that final moment, he's still, even though we've given them the briefing, even though he's basically saying like, I think you could take this over one day and like throw that to him. He's also saying, I also not sure you're 100% on board.
Yeah.
Would you be if I gave you this option?
Well, yeah. And he basically just spelled out that, their plan after Portland is they're literally going to just go across the country and wipe out any settlements they find.
Right.
Right.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so he obviously knows Rick had to come from somewhere. And so, basically just said, if you're thinking that maybe somebody, you used to know and care about is still out there somewhere, and, I just said I'm going to kill them all, and that might give you pause to want to join me, then how about this? You can go get them all first, and they can live with us and enjoy all the spoils of the Civic Republic, and so they will get to live too. Kind of like a little, like you said, you like to use the phrase, a little cherry on the top, right?
Yeah.
So you're right, and he makes a big point of telling Rick that, like, he's given the briefing like 2,700 times, and this is the first time it's ever been with anybody like Rick before. So this is kind of, Beale's kind of out on a little bit of a limb or a ledge as well. That he's like, this is not normally who I talk to about this stuff.
Right.
You're Mr. Escapee. You're Mr. A, and yet here you are. So anyway, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, no, I was going to say, like, that's the best part of the briefing. I totally forgot about this. I didn't write it in, but he makes the thing where he talks about, and then we're going to roll over these other, communities. And he says, we've had spies in major communities across the country for years.
And the world.
Yes.
So and the world. Hello, Daryl. Bonjour.
Right. So clearly someone who was with Janae is definitely a spy, or maybe they just are CRM because they've got so much in common. But online people are saying, and I'm not surprised, like Lance Hornsby definitely had to be one because he was making, he was wheeling and dealing and had all these like, hidden plans and things like that. I think that makes a lot of sense that he could be one. But did they have one at Alexandria?
Possibly. Who could, and also, I mean, who on Padre Island? I ask you, who could it be?
I don't know.
Does anyone care? No. No one cares.
Nobody cares. But someone took a bunch of pictures of like people from different, series and different areas, different settlements. There was a big picture of Lance Hornsby. Someone else, I can't remember who, but someone put a picture of Ginny from Fear the Walking Dead.
From Fear the Walking Dead, right?
Yeah. And I was like, maybe that
I don't know.
Slightly interesting.
No, but then
someone made an interesting point about like maybe Heath was one too, because he was always out. He was always doing like reconnaissance and doing like so he could easily meet up with, with
a CRM person or something.
Yeah. Because I think it's too easy to think that just Jadis was, because the Heaps community was nearby Alexandria. But they were separate. It'd be interesting too if you find out that somebody like Simon or whatever was working for
right. Yeah, that, again, so many possibilities. But I mean, just for the current shows though, it's like, who in France and is one of the New York City, the Brotherhood, is he or she? Like maybe the madam, the woman that's kind of maybe she is. And then what about the community that the marshal worked for? Maybe who in there? Because again, Beale, all we have to go by is what Beale said, and like you pointed out, he said every major settlement community that we've come across. We've put someone in there, so it was very, and I also like that he, basically the way he described it is that their armies were going to march across the country and wipe everybody out, and it's very descriptive, right? That you have literally these, hordes of ghouls roaming around the country, and now you're going to have these armies doing the same thing. So again, crazy, but fun.
You wrote down a couple of really great quotes from that briefing scene, so I want to make sure we cover those, because Beale, one thing's for sure, if someone's a raving psychotic, they definitely get some really good scripted lines to be able to say in the episode.
I mean, well, this is his Mein Kampf, this is his manifesto of how the world works. But when the briefing starts, he says the first thing I always tell everybody in the briefing is the most likely outcome is that we're all gonna die. And Rick's kind of like, which is honestly, what?
you gotta kind of take that and just be like, that everybody's always like, we gotta persevere, we gotta march on. Everything's always so like glass half full. I kind of appreciate that he was like, nope. All things being equal, it's probably most likely that we're all gonna die.
Right.
and you're like,
and you're like, you're absolutely right. And then he shows Rick a couple of like aerial reconnaissance photos, and they are of these just massive herds of ghouls. And I wrote all this down because I love all the science gobbledygook and stuff. So give me a good mouthful of Greek salad and I'm happy. And he says something like, we discovered million strong dead masses out there. So like herds of up to 1 million ghouls, which is something I've always imagined would happen, that again, you take a city of Chicago and there's, 5 million, 6 million people here. And let's say half of them get eaten and turned into ghouls. That's like 3 million ghouls. And, if they all start moving in one direction, you know what I mean? It's just like you would have these massive groups that I don't care how powerful you are, they're going to overrun you. It's going to be the end. And then he goes on to say, Our modeling shows that non-necrotic human life, people, now have 14 or so years left on this planet. And he goes, could be quicker. And he goes, it isn't just the delts, it's starvation, the tenuous balance between population and yield, disease with 1 billion petri dishes out there stumbling and cooking in the sun, waiting to transmit God knows what to us while it transforms into God knows what. And he goes, and in the end, the most likely outcome is that this rock will be cluttered with corpses to eventually rot into food for the trees. And it all becomes a strange temporary museum to an even stranger species that conquered it and marked it for a blink of its existence. And again, it's a great speech. It points out stuff that it really touched my cold and dead heart, because that's something I've always wondered about, which is, these are rotting corpses that are roaming around in, if it's said in Georgia, in extreme temperatures, or in Texas, extreme temperatures where it's 110 degrees or, 90 degrees and humid or whatever. You would think that not only do you humans have to worry about getting eaten by the ghouls, but getting any number of normal diseases that we eradicated hundreds of years ago that are going to come back because you have all of these unburied, rotting corpses roaming around. How much cholera is going to come back? How much smallpox is going to come? You know what I mean? All of these different things that people today be like, oh, don't we have a vaccine for that? It's like, well, we did, but there's nobody alive left to make it, and so I loved all of his speech. I thought it was great, and it touched on a lot of things that I always am hoping people will talk about in the zombie apocalypse genre. And so it was really cool. And of course then he veers into the plan of, we're going to wipe out Portland and we're going to save some of the kids, and that's when because again, through most of that he's still kind of rational. And you're kind of like, okay, he's just kind of quoting what his scientists, the CRM people, are saying, right? And he does point out earlier to Rick, he has another line where he says, our scientists haven't figured it out, and maybe they never will, which is a very much a staple of the zombie apocalypse genre. That medical science is always like, we don't know what's going on. And
I thought it was a good nod to Kirkman too, because Kirkman's stance is he doesn't want to know. He doesn't think that what the reason behind it is not the crux of the story. That's not the point. So the scientists can keep tilting at windmills and stuff and all of that, but finding out the answer is not something that's going to happen in a Walking Dead property, because Kirkman ultimately will probably say no.
Right. Again, unless it's fear, and then they don't want anyone to die, and they'll make sure people who get bit don't die. But that's it. That's the only thing.
Exactly.
But but I mean that when we over Christmas we rewatched, you came over and we watched Day of the Dead, the third Romero movie, and there's a very pointed moment where the helicopter pilot tells the woman, that, look, you guys, because she's a scientist, and he's like, you're never gonna figure it out. It's just like you're wasting your time here in this, in the bunker. It's like we're wasting valuable time that we could be spent out in the sun living, because you guys are trying to figure out something that can't be figured out. And that, again, like I said, that is kind of a staple in the George Romero modern zombie genre of no clue. And so I again, that the echelon briefing with between those two guys was great. And right up to the point where Rick throws the knife at him.
I was, even though he telegraphed it the whole time, like as soon as he felt like, oh, this is going south, and he took his knife out, or like it was a whole slow dance. He like slowly unsheaths the knife, he gets it into a position, he flips it, and he's really sort of playing with it. And during that whole time, I honestly did not think he was going to do what he did. I really thought that he had the knife out as a thing, like it made him feel better in the moment, almost like the person that like that you work with that upsets you, and you give them the finger underneath the table. They can't see it, but oh my God, you feel so much better having done it.
I'm doing that right now.
Yeah. Man, I walked right into that one.
Hello.
But I really just sort of put it up to something like that. Like I'm taking it out as a defensive gesture, but it also makes me feel good to hold my knife and feel like if something goes sideways, I can use it if I need to. It didn't feel like an offensive gesture because he hadn't shown his hand to Beale yet.
Mm-hmm.
And he's listening and listening. He's listening to the whole story. His face is he's doing his very, very best to not give anything away.
Right. And be like, oh my God, you monster.
Yeah. And then there's just a moment where Beale is, looks him right in the eye to see if he's on board. And there's just a slight shift in Rick. And he's like, no. And the knife comes right out and he throws it. And it was, I gotta say, I was really surprised that it happened that quick. And
well, at that point, they only had 20 minutes left to wrap up the show.
Right. But I still was like, okay, they can't wrap this up by the end of this episode. So I still in my head was like, okay, the next step of this story is Rick and Beale. And I was all excited because I'm like, that's why they got somebody like Terry O'Quinn, because then in the next section, when they do the next 6 episodes sometime next year and a half, it'll be someone that makes you want to come back, like, oh, Rick versus Terry O'Quinn, like that's going to be amazing. It'll be so good.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And all the way up until he like stabs him through with the sword and says, you're dead. I'm like, I really thought that they were still going to have like more Beale, you know?
Yeah.
Because I mean, when he threw the knife, he got him in like a non-lethal, like upper
shoulder. Was the shoulder area, which, as we know on this universe, that is like a scratch.
Yeah, you're coming right back from that. That's basically like, a cough a little bit, put a little dirt in it, and you're fine.
Yes,
you're totally
fine.
Yeah. But
I agree with you.
I really was surprised by it. How about you?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I agree with you that I was surprised too, but a little bit different, because I thought Rick took the knife out because his original plan was, I'm going to kill Beale, but the way that they were showing it, and Beale puts the sword on the table, right, and he does the whole speech, and we get the flashback of Okafor saying, when he puts the sword out and you got to swear on it, but it don't believe, you know what I mean? It doesn't mean anything. We're still on Team Okafor, and we're going to do our thing to fix the CRM. And I really thought that we would see Rick under the table, put the knife back in the sheath, and then he would swear on the sword, and Beale would be like, oh, thank God, I'm glad you're part of the team. Welcome aboard. And then Rick would leave and go on to the rest of his mission.
Exactly.
And so it was very surprising when Rick's just like, yeah, I got to kill you. You're crazy. You know what I mean? He's just like, I tried, man. I really tried. But yeah, you're nuts.
It's interesting that you said that. I'm curious, and I hadn't seen anything yet that said one way or the other, but I'm curious how others feel. I wonder if that was not his intention when he went through the door, was for that to happen. I think he knew he needed to get the echelon briefing because he needed to be in that like sort of inner circle. But I don't think killing Beale was part of the plan yet.
Yeah, no. And I think you're right. The original plan was to get the briefing so that they could go tell the Civic Republic what the CRM's doing and spill all the secrets.
And get them on their side. Yeah.
And when he found out that like they were going to wipe out Portland in like 18 hours, you know, I mean, like the operation is going to begin like in 20 minutes, right? Everybody's getting ready to get on board the helicopters. So he, like, again, the plan changed, and he's like, well, we're just going to have to kill you now and try and stop all this, because both he and Michonne separately come up with the idea of the plan is now we have to stop this horrible attack from happening, as well as everything else we want to do. And they both come up with it without talking with the other one. And they're both like, hey, you know what? I got an idea. And then the other one's like, stop the Portland attack. Yeah, let's do that. You know what I mean? It's like, they're like on board, right? Because they're a team again, and they're working together, and they're simpatico and all that stuff. But yeah, that I agree. I do not think when he went into that briefing, walking in there, he's like, okay, I'm going to get the briefing. I'm going to stab him in the chest with his sword, and then I'm going to put him in a box and take on. No, that was all kind of improvised.
Yeah, on their feet. Yeah,
right, because of the impendingness of the Portland operation.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. So the fallout from that is, let's talk about the slowest elevator ride in existence, shall we?
Oh, yeah.
And what's funny is when it was doing that, I was like, that was kind of a master stroke, because I've been there. I've been on that kind of like, cargo elevator, freight elevator, where you're like, it really does only go like that slow.
Right.
It's literally like you're going inches to go up those floors. And it was so believable, and it was so tense.
Oh, well, I mean, the whole time I'm watching it, I'm like, come on, Rick, just like do something. Be like, so excited about the Portland thing? I mean, just like make small talk with the guy, okay? Because
I was waiting for him to do something like, could he have placed his boot underneath
on
so
the blood? Right,
yeah, so that you only saw the toe of his boot and not the blood, Yeah, I don't know. I was like, he bend down to tie your shoe and
wipe it up or something.
Yeah,
it's just funny because
we instead of him doing something logical, he just stands there and is like staring straight ahead, and you spend the entire time he's doing that going, do something! Oh my God, do something!
But it's like, here's a quick tip, Rick. If you don't want to let the other person in the elevator know that something's going on at the box, don't keep staring at it. It's just like, okay, because he sees the blood, then he looks up, and then like every couple seconds he's looking down at the blood, and like eventually the other guy's like, what are you looking at? But I mean, yeah, it was my comment. I put in parentheses, I said, using the Simpsons comic book guy voice, it would be most uncomfortable elevator ride ever.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you're watching this guy, and they keep showing, you can't see his face fully because of the way they have the mask on or whatever, but you can see, he's, it's uncomfortable to be in such a long elevator ride like that with someone you don't know. You're in an enclosed space with a stranger, and you're like, do, and then you're watching this and you're like, Rick, do something, and then it becomes pretty clear, you're like, this guy's gonna die.
Oh yeah, yeah. You're like, they're gonna fight here in a minute. Yeah, it's just, but I kept waiting. Like, where's like the Han Solo moment of like, we're all fine here now. How are you? You know what I mean?
Just how are you?
Yeah, just be like, hey man, what's going on? Again, just like break the ice.
A small weapons malfunction.
Yeah, right. Just give me a few minutes to lock it down. We're all. I mean, yeah. It's just like, oh, but yeah. Just. The tension was amazing and fun and uncomfortable. It's where you're just like you said, you're like literally screaming at the TV like, well, do something.
Right. And then the release at the end. So they find, the guy sees it, they start fighting, right? And they're like really beating each other up, right? And then Rick finally gets the upper hand, and when he does, I
see what you did there.
Upper hand.
The upper hand.
I know. I'm so witty. Then the actual like the beatdown was brutal. I was gonna make a separate line about it, but just in general, like they took out like real people because they had to twice in this episode. I mean, I'm not including Beale and Thorne; those had to happen, and really was Beale human? Let's think about it.
Yeah.
But these two like innocent bystander people, and they both got really brutal deaths.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I was like, oh man. But that moment, so he goes through all of this and he's like wrapping everything, and then like Michonne shows up and she literally like sees him and she's like, okay, we need to change our plan. Not like, why are you covered in blood? Because it's so friggin' common with Rick. She's just like, oh, that tracks. That's my man. He's always covered in blood.
Hey, I mean, let's remember at the beginning of this episode when Rick shows up at the base, he has like a actual currently bleeding head wound.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like, dude, could you like wipe your head before you show up? But yeah, I mean, the whole episode, he's got that little cut right above his left eye, and it's just blood is just running down his face the whole time. So yeah, you're right. Michonne doesn't blink at all when she's like, that soldier that's covered in blood, that's got to be Rick.
Yeah. Covered in blood? Yeah, that's my man right there.
Oh yeah.
That's definitely him. And the thing is that, okay, so we just spent all that time. We've got the tense elevator ride. It's long. We're yelling at the screen for Rick to do something. Then the tension breaks. He fights this guy. He beats the shit, like really beats him up, beats his face in really bad, like to the point where it's like he's done. Rick keeps pounding his face, right?
Well, and he's using the fake fist hand thing.
Yeah.
So it's like a metal like wrecking ball that he like punches through the guy's helmet. Right.
So
and
bad.
then is like punching into his. I mean, yeah. When you see the ghoul version of him, with the bombs at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, his face is like literally coming apart. I mean, it was brutal.
His face is like meat. It's like it's terrible. But then you've got all of this tension, then the action tension, and then to sort of like put a pin in it, Michonne's like, "What do you have there?"
Yeah. Well, she points and looks at the box, and she's like, "Is this yours? What's in it?" And then Rick just kind of goes.
He's just like,
Yeah.
Yeah. This is such a Rick moment. He's so great. Like just the humor and he basically just like looks around like, awkward, shrugs his shoulders a little like, I don't know. Like,
like, well, plan kind of changed a little.
Yeah, I know we talked about like fighting Beale, but maybe Beale will now fight for us because he's, a zombie.
Yeah.
He's
been Sonequa Martin greened.
Yes, and we will now use his power for good instead of evil.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we go from this to we pivot to them starting to sort of plan out what their next move's going to be. So while they are doing this whole thing with they're setting up these little grenades, these little bombs, and they're wiring them all together. They're off in some, hideaway, some room somewhere. Meanwhile, Thorne is figuring everything out. She's on the figure things out mission.
Oh yeah.
And is
what
like,
are you up to, Grimes?
Yeah, and then she's like, when she realizes like Beale's not there and da-da-da-da, so she's on this sort of fact-finding mission. So that Thorne is like, gonna figure something out like right at the wrong time.
It's almost like her name is suggesting that she's gonna be a thorn in his side. Huh?
No, it's like they picked it on purpose. It's so Gimple.
So Gimple.
So very Gimple. And so the sort of climax starts to get together, like gather steam, when you realize like the plan is and it takes a little bit for you to sort of figure out what it is that they're going to do, but like once they get it all set up, they had all these like little bombs that little grenades that they wired together so that it would make like one continuous sort of like grenade pull. So it was sort of like clink, 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 and pull out all the pins, right? Yeah. They attach those wires to they're these two huge stacks of the gas bombs that they're going to use to gas Portland.
Right.
And then they've got the two dead people from the box. They've got Beale and the soldier that Rick killed, and they use them in opposite directions. They like have one walk one way and one walk the other way and attach a wire to them. And the basic thing is they're just going to follow their base instinct and start to trot away. And while they do that and start to slowly pull that line out taut, then Rick and Michonne will have run away and they won't be in the line of fire. And this will happen sort of behind them. Mm-hmm. Great idea, except as soon as all of that's set up and they put the zombie Beale and the zombie soldier into motion, they step out of the tent and, oh, look, it's Thorn. One of the handful of like real coincidences that I was not a fan of. I agreed that they had to have like a reckoning with Thorn. There needed to be this scene needed to happen, but where and when it happened, I was like, really here? I think they could have had the explosion scene happen and they get away, but they run into Thorn someplace else. So that, because you know that the explosion's going to happen. You know that they're going to be successful. So adding the Thorn tension into me was sort of like this fake manufactured tension of, are they going to make it? Are they going to get out in time? And it's like, they did anyway. So why even create that fake tension? Have that stuff sort of go into motion and have them get away, but have that tense scene with Thorn happen someplace else where there's different stakes involved. I can't let you get away. I need to kill you. I know what you did, da-da-da-da. And it's different because their stakes are different because they don't have to worry about hey, this big explosion is going to happen behind us. Can we just move this argument we're having to a different area, please? So yeah, I didn't like the Thorn showing up thing. I thought it was a little too on the nose. You know how those action moments go where someone shows up right as you're about to get away kind of thing. And I didn't like that. I agree that the scene had to happen. They had to have a reckoning moment with Thorn, but just, I wish it had happened in a different place. How about you? How did you feel about how that sort of, that confrontation sort of came about?
Yeah, I got to disagree with you. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I did, because you have first of all, Thorn's like, I love when she's like, whatever you did, go back and undo it. Right. Yeah. And I also love the fact that, both of them know that's like, okay, we've got like 10 seconds before this whole place is going to blow up. So we got to do something. And it was, you're right. It was very standard action movie stuff. Yeah. But again, the clock is ticking, people. At this point, they've got like 8 minutes to wrap up the whole show. So there's no time to set up another scene with Thorn, a mile away sitting next to the helicopter or something. So I didn't mind it at all. I loved it. I have to put my 2 cents in that I think it was possibly the dumbest plan you could come up with. To wire all those grenades like that, it's like if you drop one or you kick one of the wires by mistake, you're dead. You know what I mean? Because those pins will come right out, right? And I like the idea of, and all the pins are going to go at one time. But I'm like, don't you just have to pull the pin on one grenade and won't they all blow up? I mean, they're grenades. There's explosives in there, right? It was fun to see them kind of rig this whole kind of crazy Rube Goldberg plan. It was like one of the traps that the Scooby Gang would always set to catch the monster in Scooby-Doo, right? With all the crazy things that have to fall, and the balloon will inflate, and then the cannonball will roll down the track, and that was that kind of craziness. And using Beale and the soldier was a lot of fun because it kind of gives you that unknown element of, they're the ones that are going to pull the wire. It's not like Rick pulled the wire and then they run, you know what I mean? So it's sort of the idea of they get it all set up and they let the two ghouls go and they're starting to pull the wire, and then we don't really know when it's going to go off, right? It's not like you can count to 10 and the timer's going to hit 0 and it's going to blow up. It's like, whenever one of them shambles far enough to pull the pins. And so there's sort of that unknown quantity of when exactly is this gonna explode, but then you knew that you're right, you knew she was going to show up, you knew that they were going to have, that was going to be the final confrontation, and I think it's something they say in the little featurette afterwards that Gimple points out, that with Beale dead, Thorne is like a real possibility to kind of assume command.
Yes,
right.
absolutely.
So she could be like the next Beale kind of a thing. And if she's a believer, which we get the feeling that she is, that means that, what, they got to take her out too, because she'll just keep going with the Beale plan. Right.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So, she had to go for sure.
Yeah. So, they definitely had to have that reckoning. They definitely had to have that showdown. I know, that once the explosion happens, it just kind of adds to it that, well, you've got the chlorine gas, so now you have to worry about that. And then you have all like 3,000 of the reactionary force are now all ghouls, right? Yep. So now the area is teeming with zombies. So it adds just another layer to, they're trying to have this fight to the death while there's all of these other things around them that could kill them, instantly. So I was okay with it. Yes, it was convenient and so on, and it definitely is. Of course, she shows up, moment. But I was okay with it. I didn't mind it as much as you did.
As the scene wore on, though, there were a couple of really moments. I was okay with the water thing because I understood what the bombs were. But I know that if you didn't get that those were gas, that scene, there were a lot of people I saw online, though, like, how do you save yourself from an explosion with just like water and a tarp? And I'm like, but it wasn't like, yes, the grenades were a big part of that explosion. And yes, that they should not have really survived that part of it.
No. Look,
but the gas being exploded, they didn't need to have 17, grenades. They only needed like 5 or 4.
Well, yeah,
like one on each side or something.
Though, inside that tent, which, as you point out, is unguarded, which good for Team Rick Michonne. And also, it's very conveniently, the tent is right next to where all the guys are sitting to have the briefing, right? The final briefing.
It's not near the helicopters where they would load it into the helicopters for the actual attack. It's behind the people that they're going to tell we're doing this attack.
Yeah, you didn't see it, but on the other side of the bombs, that's where like they had the beer and hot dog stand that you could go and get something to, enjoy while the briefing is going on, right? But you see inside that tent, I mean, it's stacked like ceiling to floor with those shells, those gas shells or bombs. So you have to figure that each one of those bombs has a small explosive component in it because it's a bomb. It's got gas, but that's the whole point, is it explodes and the gas is released,
Right.
So imagine that there's got to be, what would you think? 5,000 bombs in that tent? 10,000 bombs? Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot. So
there was. They showed the tent like from above a couple of times, and it was pretty large.
It's like a circus tent.
And they gave you a sense of scale when they showed the long line of them that they set the hand grenades up on. They were like, however many, like 100 bombs long, and then X amount of bombs high, and then it just went on and on to the left and to the right. So, you extrapolate that number. There were, thousands of bombs there. Yeah.
And regardless of what the actual explosive power, and I'm using, air quotes right there, but it doesn't matter. The explosion that the show shows you when it goes up, my comment was, well, they're all dead, right? I mean, that shockwave, maybe Rick and Michonne might survive because they ducked behind one of those containers.
Yeah.
And so they might, and I'm saying they might survive, like they're still alive, but like their eardrums would have been shattered and they'd have blood coming out of their ears, and God knows what would have happened to their internal organs. But I'm sorry, Thorne's dead. That shockwave would have turned her into jelly. Right. And I'm just going by the explosion we see in the show.
They show a big explosion.
It goes to the wide shot, and you see the shockwave, and it wipes out. It hits all the guys sitting down in the chairs. It goes all the way past where Thorne is. Right. I mean, it is massive. And again, in the really real world, and I know it's weird to nitpick on what could really happen in a show where the main thing is the dead are back to life and eating people. But it's just like, you know what? You guys got to do better than that and make it where it's like there's a chance they could survive.
Yeah. Yeah. So explosion probably would have done something bad to them.
Yeah.
I understood that the use of the water as a defensive tool and the tarp was the smart thing.
It's a flag. It's actually a CRM flag is what.
Yeah.
And I got that because I watched it the second time with the closed captioning on it. Michonne says, pull the flag on top of us with the water or something right before.
Oh, yeah.
But you're right. And it helps them defend against the gas.
Yeah. And she knew because it's the same gas that they were attacked with.
Yes.
And so she knew what's the proper thing to do in that situation. And you can't inhale any of it because that's bad. So she knew, like, you've got to just, in the water, and it'll dissipate after a certain amount of time and blah, blah, blah. So they had that plan. And then when they, jump out so that they can try and get the other gas mask, which he didn't have, which that felt really stupid. Why wouldn't you have it on you? But
they did. They packed the gas masks in his backpack, which Thorne makes him take off and throw to the ground before the explosion. So that's why they don't have the gas masks. And then she takes one of them out of there and puts it on. So she's wearing one of them. And that's when he says, I will take her on. You go get the other gas mask.
Yeah.
So.
Right. But I think it would have been smarter to just put it on when you're leaving
the
tent. And then
yes, it's like, you know what? You have it on your person, particularly when the ghoul fuse has been lit, right?
Especially since there was that thing you said, which is, we don't know when this will happen. Like, you're planning this out based on ghoul time. Yes. One's going to walk faster than the other. What if all of a sudden, the Beale ghoul gets distracted by some other noise?
Yeah, right.
And he's like, I'm going to walk in this direction. And it doesn't happen right away. So anyway, so yes, the defensive things that Michonne does for the gas made sense because she had that knowledge, which was fine. But when they start both sort of individually fighting their way through, Michonne ends up in like a hand-to-hand combat with Thorne, and Rick gets sort of sucked in by some ghouls, and he's like trying to fight them off, and he's punching and kicking, and he's pushing, and he's doing what he can to try and get out of there, and he can't. He's getting overrun, and he's backing up, and he finally makes it into this like little crevice where he's in between like some containers, and he's there, and there's a bunch of ghouls that are grabbing at him, and he finally, you see him, he pulls a pin. He's got a grenade on him, and I know the sequence of events that he uses to survive that grenade blast, but I still say it's got a whole bunch of, oh my God. So he tosses the grenade outside of him, like it's close, but it's out, and then he literally sinks down and pulls the ghoul so that he is essentially shielded by the ghouls that are in front of him.
Right.
And they take on 80% of the blast. I still say that blast being so close, it would have at least given him way more, he would have tore something in his arm or ended up with some kind of shrapnel, or because even it's going through these ghouls, then now their bones and their, the parts of their body are now going to turn into projectiles, So anyway, so
it's very unbelievable. I grant you that. But the only thing I will say about that is that there are actual, soldiers in mostly in the Second World War, but in some of the other wars as well, like Korea and Vietnam, have reported where like literally like they'll say like, the enemy threw a grenade and it landed like right next to them, and the grenade blows up and they are fine. They survive.
Yeah.
So it's just, what I mean? It's not, it doesn't happen. It's very rare. I'm not going to say that's normal, but there are documented cases where guys have survived, grenades literally are like right at their feet. They blow up and they're wounded a little, but they live. Right. So it's possible. I don't want to say it's not, but I mean, in this case, first of all, it's like, how did he not get bitten? I mean, he's got like 6 ghouls all chewing on him. Right. Yeah. And what I kind of took away from it was he didn't have a grenade. I thought he like pulled the pin off of one of the ghouls.
Maybe one of the other guys had
it like attached to its uniform, because he just kind of came up with the pin, right? Yeah. And so that was what I took from it. But in either case, I mean, that grenade went off and it's very close. He's in a very tight environment and it's metal, so that shockwave is going to be reflected all over in there. And even though all the bone and all of the shrapnel that's created from that, it like I always say with explosions, it's the shrapnel's deadly, but it's that shockwave that kills you most of the time, right? Because that hits you and you just, your body just is like, oh, I'm done. And but again, he came out of it, and again, both of his ears were fine, right? No shattered eardrums, he was okay, because again, star of the show and all that. But I'm right there with you in that I also had the really moment when he pulls that pin, and then you see the explosion. From Michonne's point of view, we see the explosion, and like all of the chunks of the ghouls come flying out of that little alcove. Right. And then she kind of walks over and you see him, and he's holding like the torso of a ghoul. That's all that's left. And he throws it, and then he kind of staggers out, and you're like, he's fine. Yeah. It's all good.
I put my notes in all caps. I put, it's just a hand grenade. I'm fine.
I mean, fine.
He has to yell that because he's lost, like, both his eardrums have now been pierced. Can't hear anything.
Yeah, he can't hear anything. He can't see anything. He's got blood coming out of his nose, but I'm fine.
Yeah. So it's, Michonne has killed Thorn. The explosion has happened, and, it's created all of these ghouls. So we know, like, they've basically won this portion of the battle.
Yeah.
So there's sort of like a, passage of time, like sort of screen wipe, and you see, I think they show them in the helicopter right away, and there's like some over the voiceover right away. And
they basically, like, Thorn, she has like the death wound. Excuse me. She has a death wound from the sword, and we kind of glossed over that Rick gives Michonne Beale's crazy Revolutionary War sword so she has a blade again, and so Thorn has the trident gun, and Michonne has the sword, and they're kind of fighting with that, and eventually Michonne runs her through with that. But before she dies, she gives her gas mask to Rick. So Michonne gets a gas mask and Rick gets a gas mask, and then they kind of struggle against some of the ghouls to try and climb up on top of one of the containers.
Oh yeah, and then it's like, okay, we did it.
Yeah, and so they're like on top of the containers, and they take their masks off because the gas is dissipated enough now that they can breathe, and then basically it kind of pulls back into this massive drone shot, and while it's doing that, that's when you start hearing what we appear to be like a newscaster reporting for the Civil Republic about what happened.
Yeah, and you get all of the tidbits about, unfortunate event, and, come to find out, and, the Civic Republic, the army has been removed, and they are no longer in power.
Yeah. And they like the Civic Republic Council voted unanimously to, have civilian authority instituted on the military, and they said Beale died, and the whole reactionary force was wiped out, and it was about to attack Portland, and then they point out that the regular army wasn't really involved, so they're still going to be part of what's going on. And then they say that they immediately, change all the rules and let people leave if they want to leave. And they are going to help people that need help rather than go kill them. And so, it's like this very, very quick series of events. Everything is coming up Milhouse for Rick and Michonne in terms of their plan, right?
Yeah. And while they're doing this, it eventually shows this one helicopter flying over, the, trees and whatever. And it's on this sort of journey going somewhere. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to figure out, well, what's in the helicopter?
What's in the helicopter?
And they don't show Rick and Michonne's face. They just show their hands. Like she grasps his hand because his hand is like he's nervous or whatever.
She's almost got the shakes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she holds his hand. You can tell it's them. It's so obvious.
I just like when they walk off the helicopter, they show their feet and Rick's wearing the boots.
But leading up to that, they gave like one little thing where I bet they filmed this just in case they couldn't get Kaylee and Anthony to come and do that scene. Mm-hmm. They did the whole like walkie-talkie, Shoto,
oh, yeah,
it's Daito.
Yeah.
It's Daito. And she's like, we're coming. And I bet they filmed that just in case they had to have like just that one little scene, but they showed that, then they show them in the helicopter, and they show them come off the helicopter, and you see the boots. Mm-hmm. And Judith and RJ are there, and there's this big reunion, and it's a really, really, really sweet moment where they actually, Judith has her moment with her dad, and
Shane?
I'm using air quotes when I say dad. And then, RJ has his moment with his dad. No air quotes needed. Are
we sure? Man? I don't know. Was Sadiq around? We don't know, right?
Hey. Are you the brave man?
Yeah.
I am the brave man.
You could just call me dad.
Dad. And then they have the big hug, and it's really cute and sweet and everything. And, they basically, what's great is the thing that was said while they were still in the helicopter was about, people can come and go, but also, there are other communities that we will now be reaching out to that will be a part of. So it sort of lays the groundwork for, CRM or the people from the Civic Republic showing up in other shows, but in a different way, like not in this like sinister way that they have been. But it kind of makes me feel like I want to send up a smoke signal and tell Isabel and Al that they don't have to hide anymore. Because no one's going to be coming and looking for them because nobody cares. So it's nice. It shows that there's going to be like sort of this future. So it felt like, oh, good future. We got the reunion we all kind of wanted. Everybody's back together again, and it's all happy-go-lucky. That's it. And then the episode's over, and you're like, okay, that was everything in 52 minutes.
52 minutes, baby.
Yeah, and again, it was fast, but I did really like that final scene. It was sort of like everything you could have wanted in that scene. And I love that they both went crazy for Michonne, and they're hugging her, and Rick is sort of like hanging back. Mm-hmm. Like he's not part of it at first, and you could feel there's a little bit of nervousness, and he's uncomfortable, and what's going to happen? Will they remember me? Will Judith remember me? And so Judith does, obviously, but and then he's never met RJ before, and there's so much, it's so tense and strange, and I liked the way that they sort of crafted it and put it all together. It made sense in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, So I have to say, I put it in my notes, and I'm wondering how you feel about it too, that there's a lot of cleanliness with this ending, like we were saying, with, knots being tied up nice and tight. And it is a little neat, and I give it that. But I have to say that the more I'm thinking about it, the more I kind of prefer an ending like this than a drawn out, like, we're going to come back next year. And then if it's good, then we'll come back the year after that or whatever. I don't know that they needed any more story. They don't, could we get some more CRM stuff? Yeah, but we could get that through other sources, through other shows. It doesn't have to be these two. And I think we got everything that we wanted and needed from Rick and Michonne getting back together again. And I kind of am glad that it's been tied up so nicely, because they don't need to do anything else. I think they're good. What do you think?
When you mean they, do you mean just Rick and Michonne, or you mean the show in general?
What do you mean? Like they, what did I say?
Like you said, they don't need to do anything else.
I mean Rick and Michonne. I don't think there's any more story there. I think I'm fine with knowing, don't get me wrong, they could squeeze some story out of this. Don't get me wrong. There's plenty of story that they could do. I don't think they need to. I think if they leave Rick and Michonne just the way they are, and you get to, use your imagination for what might happen next, or maybe you get a little tidbit in the Daryl show, like something said offhand or whatever that ties everything together. I don't think we need to see Rick or Michonne anymore. I think that we've covered their story. I'm not saying we won't see them.
I'm
saying
pretty sure we're
to.
Not going to see them anymore. Not on this show. So
no, and I don't think it'll be now, whether or not, I don't know how they do it, but if you could somehow get, Rick or Michonne to show up on any of the other shows, even if it's a quick filmed scene, I don't know, that'd be fantastic. But you can't do that, because Rick, if Rick shows up, why doesn't he stay? Why doesn't he help Daryl, or what? You know what I mean? There's too many problems that would come up with that. Right. Which is why I don't think we need to, like, they were reunited with the people that make the most sense for them to see first, and then you can sort of imagine what happens next. You don't have to have a scene with them for anything else. They can just be talked about. Like we said, maybe they are the people that, Carol's like, Rick came back, and maybe that's what she said, but we don't have to see Daryl and Rick have their reunion. It can just be implied. If he comes home, he'll be able to see Rick. It's a reason to need to come home from France, because Rick is home and he's dying to see you, and blah, blah, blah. Would I love to see them show up on one of these series? Like I said, yes, that'd be great. I don't think it's going to happen.
The Rick Negan reunion, that'd be cool. What I'm most curious is when we do get the Book of Carol going, and Carol finally meets up with Daryl.
Yeah.
What is she going to tell him?
I don't know.
Is she gonna say, "Oh my God, you know what? Rick and Michonne are back"? Really? Oh, okay. I guess we gotta get out of France then.
Yeah, we got. Forget about these French people. That's my buddy. That's my brother.
The ending. Just my take on it. The reunion. Yeah, it was like everything that the Dwight and Sherry reunion should have been, but wasn't. Because they didn't have the reunion, then immediately afterwards they both decided that they need to be apart immediately, right? That didn't happen, but it was great, and it was cool to see them. But I mean, my big reaction was, oh my God, is Kaylee Fleming grown? I mean, she's like taller than he is now. You know what I mean? I'm just like, holy crap, she's like a teenager, which she is, So that was amazing. And it's funny because you can still see that it's her, but you can tell she's growing. The baby face is gone, right? And now she's like, like precocious teen. So but I also thought it was very convenient that they landed in like some weird nondescript field very far away from Alexandria. So there was no chance, and nobody else from Alexandria came out to meet them. Right. You know what I mean? It was just really convenient that neither of the kids happened to mention to any of the adults that you think are watching them or, parenting them at this point, right? You have to think that Carol left them with someone in charge of them, right?
You'd think so, but Carol's not great at that kind of stuff.
No, that is true. But anyway, you think now Carol's been gone for a few weeks, they might get hungry and like go next door and ask, one of the neighbors, whether it's Ezekiel or Gabriel or whoever is still in Alexandria, right? Like, hey, could you have some breakfast? You think they would have told somebody that, hey, Rick and Michonne are coming, but no, of course not, because that would require a lot more money for cameos and stuff. So, and then we get the very last shot as it kind of pulls away from them. We see, multiple CRM helicopters with these big, carrying these big like supply bundles. And to me, that's like, oh, they're going to feed Alexandria.
Yeah. Right.
They're like one of the things that Rick and Michonne did before they left was, we have a community. I'm sure they could use help. And so, boom, they, got that stuff. So kind of building on Ezekiel last week, or not Ezekiel, but Gabriel saying, hey, our people are starving. We could really use some food. Yeah. We kind of get that. So, but you're right. The ending was fine. It wrapped it all up. Clearly, season 2, I guess, is going to be on hold permanently. But and we kind of talked about this a little bit before we started recording, in that, I'm fine with this only being one season, but why did it have to be 6 episodes when it could have very easily have been 8 or 9, and it would have been, I think, great. I think so too. They could have squeezed out 3 more episodes, everything that happened in this one, and I think it would have worked. So
and they still they still could have ended at the same spot, the same moments, and still have fleshed out some more of that, the stuff that happened at the Cascadia place, and then what happened right after. Like, what? Yes, we hear the voiceover, but what if they just showed us what actually happened? And
right.
It's funny. I was going through some of the cast list and looking at some stuff, and I was like, oh, his friend there, the one that was Esteban. I was like, we never saw him again.
No.
And wouldn't that have been interesting to see him in the town and see Rick back and have Rick tell him, you're free, you don't have to stay here if you don't want to. Right. Like that would have been a really great like sort of circle to come back around, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. And think about it, Esteban's like the only other character that was introduced on this show that's still alive.
That we know of.
Yeah, it is. The only named character, everybody else is dead.
Yeah, they are.
So
except for Rick and Michonne.
Rick and Michonne, baby, because they are unstoppable. And I know, like, we kind of glossed over it a little, but Rick was getting the briefing with Beale. Michonne like goes in to watch the movie. Yep. There's that whole scene where she, where they're talking about like pulling out like 10% of the children of Portland will be pre-selected to be evacuated. And, like they have like that chilling line of like, don't tell the children that everything will be fine. Tell them that they will be fine, which I thought was pretty creepy. That
macabre.
It puts a shiver down your spine. Right. And then she's so worked up by it. She gets up and she leaves. right in the middle of it, which we talked about before too. It's like, there's no one going like, hey, where are you going? You got to watch this, but she does.
This is mandatory.
Yeah. And so she goes out and she's going to like jump over the wall and like make her escape and follow the original plan. And she literally is like right there. And then she's like, damn it, I can't do it. And then she's like, we gotta, nope, plan's been changed. And then she turns around and she storms back in there, right? And that's when she gets the crate with the grenades.
Yeah.
And that's where she starts formulating that plan. But I did like that little, Michonne got that little moment of like, I know the smart thing is to go and save myself and get back to my kids and do all the stuff, that I need to do. But I can't let this lie.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not, it's not who, it's like, it's the line, from the movie that sponsored the episode, Michonne tells Rick, it's the shit we do.
It is the shit we do.
So yeah. And I like that moment. I thought that was a cool little moment that Michonne got to have where she's just like, damn it, I should go. I'm not going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's literally the through line of the whole episode is that they both are struggling with the whole, like, if we want to survive and get back to our family, we should go, but we've got to do, she pivoted and did what she did, and he pivoted and killed Beale. And
at
so
almost the same time they did the pivoting. Yeah. And you're right. It's like, we should be selfish and just get out of here and go back to our kids.
Yeah.
But that's not how we're wired. What doesn't one of them say at one point, we can take down the Sierra and we're the only ones who can, kind of something like that. Right. And
because we're the right kind of crazy. Yeah.
We are just the right kind of crazy to pull this off, Yeah. So,
and it worked.
But it did. It really did. Yeah. So
in less than an hour. Good job.
You know it. So.
I feel like I caught all of my notes and didn't really need to do anything more. It looks like we got most of your stuff too.
Pretty much just a couple of lines that we don't really need to get into, because you guys know what they were. They were fun little moments. I would point out, just in terms of Easter eggs, I love the bunny.
Mm-hmm.
A nice little callback to episode 1 of the main show. So that was fun. And also a very creepy, almost like Nazi kind of moment, right? Where like these people are planning on wiping out all of these kids' parents. And so they're like collecting toys to give these orphan children when they first show up. So they're like, here, kid, play with this. It's just the length that they went to is very creepy. So, but I just like the fact that it was literally the same bunny that the little, ghoul girl that Rick first encounters was carrying. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. All right. God, we had a lot to talk about. We're gonna continue to have more to talk about. We've got lots of really great feedback for this episode. So before we talk about that, we're gonna go ahead and take a quick break, folks. When we come back, we'll discuss all of that awesome listener feedback, and we'll talk about what's coming up next on the podcast.
So please, even though we're done with Rick and Michonne, please stick around because Diana and I will be right back.
Now there's about 20 of them out there.
What will we do?
Don't worry, we're safe in here. They'll never get in.
Why is it that in every zombie story, people always think that their safe haven is invulnerable?
I know. It's like, hello, the walkers are totally gonna get in. You better get ready for it.
No! Diane, get behind me. No, it's not stopping.
Do something, Jack!
And another thing, how come nobody in a zombie story has ever seen a zombie story?
Do you know how much time in human life would be saved if just one person in the group was up on the genre?
What do we do?
Aim for the head.
What?
Aim for the head.
You heard them. Aim for the head.
Quick, Diane, I think we should try and fix the barricades.
I think we should listen to them.
Now, that's the first good idea they've had all episode.
I still don't think they're gonna make it.
Aim for the Head, a weekly podcast covering the hit AMC programs The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. Join hosts Diana and Steve as they recap and discuss the latest episodes. Aim for the Head, available on iTunes. You can also follow them on Facebook.
Hey there, this is Greg Nicotero, and you're listening to Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And don't forget to always aim for the head, because body shots, they really just don't work.
Hey everybody, we are back. We're going to jump right into our listener feedback. And Steve, you're going to go first, so why don't you take it away?
All right. Well, this actually we've got some feedback from Andy from Germany. He, if you remember, he was conspicuously absent last week, but he did chime in with feedback for episode 4 and last week's episode. So I'm going to handle episode 4. So we're going back 2 episodes back.
Yes.
Which I believe was the episode that Denai wrote, where the two of them are in the apartment in the mountains. So it's that one. That's the episode. All right. So he starts out and says, this again was via the email, and he says, "Hi, Diana and Steve. Episode 4, unfortunately, didn't offer anything of interest for me." Really? Interesting. Okay. He goes, "So I can't write much. One detail I noticed is that the CRM destroys the helicopter to eliminate any sign of their existence. This doesn't make much sense because the 200,000 people in Omaha and Portland knew of the CRM and their fancy helicopters. Also, smaller communities like the Junkyard People or this artist group in World Beyond. During 15 years, this knowledge would obviously spread. Greetings from Germany, Andy." And yeah, I think it's kind of twofold, Andy, there, that they want to eliminate traces of them, but I think they also want to eliminate anyone else getting any of their tech. And so a helicopter crashes, there's still stuff that could technically be salvaged from it. And so they just go and destroy it as much as they can to make it, completely useless to anyone, that would come along. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, clearly all these other communities know about the CRM, and are aware of them. So it's not like it's a huge secret, but the other thing too is, what if one of the guys in there has a map on them that points out where the CRM is? Right. So they blow that up too. So that, in case that were to be the case, it would be destroyed. So I think that's more what it is. But a good point. And I'm sorry that episode didn't do much for you, because I kind of liked a lot of the stuff that Denai had written in that one. So that's too bad. I would have thought you would have enjoyed a little bit more of that. But I appreciate the feedback. So thank you.
Agreed. And Andy wrote in and gave us some feedback on the last episode too. So episode 5, Become, because the one before was What We, and then Become, and the gimpleness of it all.
The gimple.
Yeah. But it was the Jada's death scene episode. So
yes.
Also via the email.
Geyser episode.
Yes, exactly. Andy writes in, of course, via the email and says, "Hi, Diane and Steve. I saw it coming. Jada's jumping out of a bush. Ha, I knew you weren't dead. But I thought you would pull Rick back to the CRM by the ear. Michonne changed her priorities so that the CRM is more important than her kids now. I didn't see that coming." I see what you mean, because they decide we've got to take down the CRM, that's more important than getting back to our kids right away. She sort of pivoted there. I agree. Yep. The whole Jadis arc make no sense to me. She is an artist. She didn't know the secret echelon plan back then, so why did she join the military? It's kind of interesting to think about it from that perspective. I was curious about that. And he's right. Like, if she didn't know all of that stuff, how did she come to that decision so quickly? Like, this is what I want to do. Like, what was her motivation? Yeah, it's interesting. He continues and says, "I also don't understand how she came to hunt down Rick and Michonne alone. The circumstances of their disappearance together were suspicious. That's why Jadis joined the reclamation team. Why did she blow up the helicopter instead of taking a look at the dead bodies in the wreck? How she recruited her 3 helpers was hilarious. In their situation, I would have asked Jadis why are you alone and need our help if you are part of such a mighty community? And that, my friends, is hilarious. I didn't even think of that. Like, I can take you into my community. We're mighty. They don't seem so mighty right now.
Yeah,
while
you're like bleeding like a stuck pig, lady. What are you talking
about? He continues and says, about the timeline, I am also somewhat unsure. Michonne was sent with Virgil, to an island to get weapons for the fight against the Whisperers. If RJ is 8 now, it seems indeed that Gabriel kissed Jadis while being together with Rosita, but I could imagine they had an open relationship. Greetings from Germany, Andy.
Well, remember, he was father, not the father.
He was father, not the father. So thanks for writing in, Andy. We missed you last week.
We did.
We're glad that you're caught up, and please still send in feedback for the finale. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it. We may not be right back at podcasting right away for something new, which we'll discuss at the end. But the next time we podcast, we will go ahead and add your feedback in. So.
Maybe we'll save it for Book of Carol. Episode 1 or something, if as opposed to putting it on like a review of something else that's non-Walking Dead related, but definitely send it in. And you make a lot of good points about Jadis and some of her choices. The whole why they blew up the helicopter without looking in the bodies, I thought that was a little weird too. Particularly because they're so paranoid about people getting away from them, and it's Rick that was on board. You think they'd really want to make sure that he's like super dead. And but as far as why she came by herself, I think the reason to me is that she's kind of her neck is kind of out there with Rick because of what she knows about him and their kind of deal and so on. So she had to kind of go by herself because she had to protect her involvement with all that stuff, right? You know what I mean? Like if she would have brought a big team, they'd be like, why are you so gung-ho to get you know what I mean? It would raise questions that she might be uncomfortable answering. So I think that's why she went all by herself. I think the bigger question is, how the hell did she find him? Because her explanation is very crackerjack and like, really? I don't think so.
Thin at best.
Yes. But anyway, Andy, thank you so much for writing it in. We love it when you submit your feedback because you usually have really good points, and this was no exception.
Yeah. Thanks again for writing in.
All right. So moving along, now we are all on this current episode.
Yes, the finale.
The last time. And we start off with our, amazing listener, Bev 2, from sunny or possibly rainy Old England. And she sends us via the email, and she says, "Hi, guys. I hope you had a really nice week. Well, the last episode has been shown, and what do you think? There was a large amount of suspension of disbelief in this episode. Yes, there was. But that was mainly because they had to cram so much into it. Yes, they did. It was nice to get to understand why the CRM are doing what they are doing, but because of the rush to get so much in, it felt like the 14 years that mankind might have left was just brushed over."
Yeah.
That is true. There were a lot of times when I was nervous about our heroes not surviving. As soon as they split up, I began to get really worried. Even when Rick blew up the zombies around him and walked away, I thought there might be a chance he was bit. Yeah, I did too. It certainly looked like there were lots of opportunities for one of those ghouls to, take a chunk out of him, right? But, he's the star, so he has immunity. She goes on to say, I like the flashbacks during the briefing. They certainly showed the sort of people Rick and Michonne are. My husband even commented on those bits saying, that's who Rick is. He's going to kill everyone. That's what he does. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
And he goes, when Beale asked Rick who he had lost, I thought he would say himself and was surprised he brought up Carl. So it felt like a great piece of writing when he stabs Beale and said he'd lost himself and Carl and Michonne brought him back. Like I said, I thought he would mention Lori. You'd think his first wife that, he you would think would be in there. But no, it was Carl. So she goes on to say, I think it was fine that they survived the explosion because it was mainly gas, making it slightly less far-fetched. Yeah, did it though.
Yeah.
After that, it was just a rush to tie everything up in a neat little bow for the CRM. And yes, we used the phrase, tying up the knot, very tight, nice little knots a lot in this episode because there was a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
Then came the ending we had all been waiting for. And wasn't it a wonderful little touch to see Rick's hand shaking nervously in the helicopter? You pointed that out too, Dee. The reunion had me in tears, apart from the poorly written "Are you the brave man? Yes, but you can call me Dad" bit, which was beyond cheesy. Well, come on, what's he gonna say to the kid? Have you done your homework? I mean, and then she goes on to say, all in all, this was a great season, with episode 4 being one of the best episodes ever. I agree. I just can't help feeling that if it had been 10 episodes instead of 6, it might have felt less rushed and would have had more time to breathe. And yes, I think we both agree to that. Right, Dee?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it definitely, they could have padded it out a couple more, and I think we would have been fine. As the camera pulled above and away, revealing the family hug, the tears fell down my cheeks, but a couple of questions that I would like answered went through my head. Will we ever see Rick unite with Daryl and Carol? As I think they've done a good job at making the Daryl show tie into this one. The other question is, how does any of this tie into Dead City? What with their marshal/sheriff thing going on? Again, two really good questions. And like I said in the last segment, I'm very curious to see what Carol will tell Daryl when she finally meets up with him. And with our luck, the whole season, they won't be together, right? Watch, there'll be, two storylines or something. But when it finally happens, what did she say on the radio that he didn't hear, that we didn't hear? How are they going to handle that? That's going to be really interesting to see. Well, that's what I thought. Can't wait to hear yours, Bev. And we do not get a weather report, so I can only assume it is sunny and beautiful there. So
I hope so.
Yeah, and you're right. I don't know, Bev, how is this going to tie into Dead City, with their weird community with the marshals and all that stuff? Because, again, Beale said they have operatives everywhere. So
I know.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Yeah. I'm curious to see if that pans out, if any of that stuff. And like we said, I don't think we talked about it on episode. I think it was before we started recording, but definitely curious if that's what Carol said, if she said, Rick's back, or if they purposefully left it vague so they could use it for anything, Negan's back, Maggie's back,
Maggie's back. Yeah. Morgan's back. Right.
Yeah.
He wants us to go to this crazy island that no one can find, or whatever. And my comment when we were talking about it, and I think it was before we started recording, is I wonder if we will get, in the Daryl and Carol show, will we get a scene of that conversation, but from Carol's side of things, where we actually hear that line? That's, will they go that far? So we'll have Carol talking on the radio. Daryl will get through to her and they'll start having the conversation. And, again, I could see them doing that because that would spur her to go out and look for Daryl, which is what she was doing at the end. So, maybe we would get that. I don't know. It's good. Very good questions, Bev. I'm not sure yet how much they're going to tie into this. How much will the CRM impact the ongoing shows? We'll have to see.
Yeah. I can't wait, though.
I know, me too. But thank you again, as always, for writing in, Bev. It's awesome.
Thank you, Bev. Love hearing from you. All right. Next up, we got an email from our pal, Amelia, from the Amelia Bitchin' Boutique podcast. Hey, Amelia.
Hello,
thanks
Amelia.
for writing in. And she always writes in via the email. And here we go. She writes in and says, well, here we are at the end of The Ones Who Live and possibly the beginning of a new series called The Shit We Do.
And it's not a series, people. It's a movie.
She continues and says, honestly, I would be super impressed if the powers that be let this be the end. The final moment being Rick hugging his kids. Boom, fade to black. Beautiful, because what's the alternative? A little bit more, and then a little bit more, like, hey, maybe Morgan walks up, and then what happens? And maybe the Grimes family moves to Philadelphia, or, anything else. Anything they do past this moment would feel wrong to me. Rick's story is done, and he didn't have to die. Cool, the happiest possible ending. But enough about the future. This episode! I loved it. I loved seeing Jadis Ann's room. Me too! With all the artwork, especially all the portraits of Gabriel. Yay, artist Anne! I loved how the meeting with Beale revealed so much, getting more and more tense. I'll admit, I got distracted by the details of his military background. And she goes and says, my dad was an Army colonel. Whoa. Ooh. And Beale definitely was in the Army if he went to Fort Benning for his officer training. Fun fact, it's not Fort Benning anymore because Benning was a Confederate general. And I was a little surprised he didn't also say that returning to Pennsylvania included being stationed in Carlisle, which is about halfway between Pittsburgh and Philly, and is where the U.S. Army War College is located. And I lived on base there when I was 5, but I digress.
Wow.
Oh, look at that little bit of knowledge, huh? Love it. My only criticism of the episode, and it's small, is how many times I yelled, "Y'all don't got time for that." Every time Rick and Michonne stopped prepping or moving forward to hug and or kiss and or have a conversation. Like what? You can't talk and loop wires through grenade pins? Chop chop, we got shit to do. Rick didn't even put the damn gas mask on because he stopped for a cuddle. Anyway, I loved their big boom plan. Loved the big ugly cry ending. Loved seeing how tall Judith is. Oh my God, she is so grown up.
I know, right?
I even loved RJ and his emotionless line read. He's cute. He can get away with it. And what a darling outfit Michonne found for her trip home. Girl can always get her fit together. Now, I guess we have the Book of Carol to look forward to. I'll watch it, but I'll complain a lot. Onward and upward. Love you guys. Amelia, you're best.
Very funny. Yeah.
I was going to say, in her response to saying the thing about his emotionless line read, there's a lot of stuff on the Twitters about people complaining about the young guy's name is Anthony Azor. And, you know, I get it. When he's like 4 or 5, you laid off of him because he was just a teeny kid. Even though people were like, oh, RJ's the worst. We don't like RJ. Now he's a little bit older and people were really laying into him. And it's like, dude, there's like 9,000 things that happened in this episode. And you're going to get hung up on 2 lines.
On 2 lines. Yeah, because I still believed. I mean, you know, it was bad. I get it. But yeah, it's like, come on.
And here's the thing. A lot of times when you're casting those actors, especially in a visual medium like TV or whatever, they needed to find a kid that looked like he came from an African-American mom and a very not African-American dad.
A redneck
and
dad.
They needed him to look like he was mixed race. And he does. He does have a lot of characteristics to his face that he looks a little bit like Denai Guerrero, looks a little bit like Andy Lincoln, you know.
He looks a little like Scott Gimple.
You know, whatever. So a lot of times in those things for kids, they pick them based on that. And maybe maybe they wanted RJ to be this sort of quiet kid. You know, he needs to contrast a little bit. Like Judith is like this kick-ass, you know, she does all this fighting and all of this like aggressive stuff. And, you know, she's always sheltered RJ. She's always kept him safe. So I don't think it's a big stretch for him to be sort of, I don't want to say timid, but he's not as aggressive as Judith can be, you know, about stuff. And I put a point out on Twitter, and I just want people to think about it and chew on it a little bit. In real life, if you've ever seen a small child meet a brand new adult they've never met before.
Yeah.
Even without any of the emotional stuff where this is your dad you're meeting for the very first time, but he's also an adult who's like asking questions like, you know, hi, I'm your, you know what I mean? Like anytime you see that happen in real life, what happens? The kid is 9 times out of 10 shy, doesn't want to jump right in,
Right.
They hide behind what, if you're meeting like your mom's new boss or something, you're going to hide behind your mom. You're going to stick your fingers in your mouth because you're nervous, and you're going to look down and not look someone in the eye. And that's a lot of what RJ's acting has been. And you know what? It's fine. He's a kid. Kids are supposed to act that way. My niece, who I love dearly, if I see her and I'm like, can I get a hug? She'll be like, I don't know. Like, that's how kids
but I mean, everybody's
are.
Like that with you.
That's not true. My hugs are great. But you know what I mean? Like, if you're, if you have the expectations of a certain emotion or an emotional output from kids, you clearly don't spend a lot of time with kids. And don't get me wrong, for every kid that acts like RJ is acting, I think, there are the outgoing kids, the ones that would jump up and run right over to you and say those things. I appreciate that. But there are lots and lots of kids who act just like RJ did when they meet someone new. And it's very normal, and it didn't ruin the episode for me. And he said, I believed, and he hugged his dad. I mean, what else do you people want? Nobody's getting nominated for Emmys for this show because Walking Dead never gets nominated for Emmys. And this kid is just a kid. Like, nobody cares. Ultimately, if that's the thing that you're gonna if you're gonna die on that hill, then I don't know what to tell you. He's just a kid. Like, just let it go, people. Big deal. RJ said a couple of emotionless lines. Deal with it. There was like so many minutes beforehand that was so much better. And
exactly.
I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for your feedback, Amelia. I agree with all of it. For the emotionless RJ thing, he was fine, and he is cute. He's a cute little kid. He smiled, and it was perfect. I think it worked out just right and just the way it should have. So thanks for writing in, and I don't care if you complain about Book of Carol. I think it would be funny to hear about Book of Carol from your perspective, because you have such an amusing way of writing in about the episode. So please, 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 please continue to write in once we start covering Book of Carol, whenever that may be, sometime in the summer. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So thanks again, Amelia, for writing in. We love hearing from you.
We do.
Yeah.
And then before I go on, I just want to make sure, did you get everything you needed to say about Kids Out? Because we got more time.
No. I there's tons of things I'd love to say about kids, but specifically I was sort of standing up for that one little kid. So yeah, that's fine. I'm good.
Just make sure you're okay, because that was quite the rant. I was very impressed. I mean, I actually I got up and actually checked on the soup there while you were going, so I missed some of it, but it sounded good.
It was good. I really laid into people.
All right, so moving along away from the kids discussion, our next piece of feedback comes from our listener Erica Price. Hey Erica, hello, how are you? And she sent this via the Facebook. So she responded to one of our posts about this, and she said, as soon as they started showing flashback clips of previous moments on the original show, I started getting really nervous. That's what they do when someone great is about to die. We have a nice, neat little retrospective of how amazing they are. It could have been either one of them at any point during the show. They were both in a lot of peril many times. That's true. And I'm thinking about like when Sasha, popped out of the coffin at the end. We got lots of flashbacky stuff with her.
We sure did.
So very much following that trope there. Let's see. She goes, it did seem like it was rushed, but I loved the fast-paced action of it as well. The explosion at the end, they're just hiding under a tarp, seemed a little bit convenient. Plus the fact that Thorne also survived to continue the battle. Come on. And I agree. I mean, cinematically, the way they showed that explosion, I'm sorry, they all did, right? They are. But whatever, it's TV. You got to just go with it. All right.
Yeah.
She goes, but it was epic Walking Dead style, and I loved it. I don't even mind that the grenade that Rick had left him, that the grenade that Rick had left him completely unscathed at that point. I was all in. Kill them all. The montage at the end with the news story and them reuniting with their kids was so emotional. What a great show. What a great ending. No loose ends. Loved it. And I think, a lot of your points were things we talked about. So we're right there with you that, it was definitely a lot of really moments, but again, it was well put together and the ending was a huge payoff. So I think other than the emotional RJ, it was great.
Yes.
So thank you, Erica, for writing in. It's great feedback as always. We love to hear from you.
Thanks, Erica. Next up, we got some feedback via the Facebook from our listener, Joe Levine. Long time no talk, Joe. Thanks so much for writing in.
What's going on, Joe?
It's been a hot minute since we've heard some feedback from you, Joe. And I appreciate it. I hope you're going to watch Book of Carol. Yeah. And if you do, you got to send in feedback for that too. So we hope to hear from you some more. But until then, I'm happy that we received this feedback. So Joe writes in and says, up until halfway through this episode, I was sure there would be another season. And Joe, I am right there with you.
Yeah, I think we all were, right?
I'm not even sure if it was halfway. I mean, all the way up until I guess once they killed Beale. But Thorne would have made it.
Yeah, but right. For me, the turning point was on season 2 was Beale. When he killed him, I'm kind of like, okay.
This looks like it's going to go in a different direction.
Yeah. Well, that's when I went, that's what the episode title means. Damn you, Gimple.
Damn it. He continues on and says, I was shocked that they just kind of brushed over everything. Yeah, you're not wrong. It was nice to see Rick get home. Would have been better if there was a bit more story. And I agree. I think that we both agreed with this. The outline of the story they told was good, but if they had squeezed in maybe 1, maybe 2 more episodes where they could have fleshed out just a little bit more, a little more detail, and not had felt so rushed at the end, I think it would have been even better. Just so much better.
I agree.
Thanks for writing in, though, Joe. We're so glad to hear from you.
Absolutely, man.
Curious. Clearly you must have watched the whole season. So if you have any other further feedback about how you felt about the show as general, send it in, man. Send it in. We'll definitely include it on a future podcast. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Please do. All right.
Yeah.
So
thanks, Joe.
Moving along, our next piece of feedback comes from our listener, Alma Contreras. What's up, Alma?
What up?
How you doing? And she sent this via the Facebook. And she goes, all right, first off, after watching the finale, I really don't think there will be another season.
You think?
I think so. I think they're leading in that direction.
That's definitely, it's a lean. They're leaning. It's not definite.
It's not confirmed, but I'm pretty sure that you're right.
Feels right. Yeah.
Feels kind of permanent, don't it? All right. So she goes on to say, I thought the finale was a bit rushed, but also really good. Honestly, I did not ever like the CRM, and I'm glad we're done with the whole ordeal. I love the big explosion that took out the CRM's elite. Yeah, it was cool. It was a cool effect. The best part of the story was Michonne and Rick finally getting reunited with their kids. That was all I needed. And then she has 3 crying emojis, tears of joy kind of thing.
Yes.
She goes, I hope you guys like the finale. Can't wait to hear y'all's thoughts. And I think, we agree. The payoff of seeing the 8-foot tall Judith reunite with her dad was worth it, right? And the emotionless RJ say his lines was worth it. So I agree.
Don't trigger me again.
So, but you're right. I think if anything you take away about the finale, not just with what we're saying, but I think in general, is people are saying I liked it. It seemed awful quick.
Yeah, I just wanted a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. So. But Alma, thanks for writing in, and we look forward to hearing your comments on Book of Carol, because that's coming up.
It is. Next up, our final piece of feedback we got from our pal Karen, not related to Lauren Cohen, via the Facebook.
Hey, Karen.
Hey, Karen. And she wrote in saying, wow, they really wrapped that up in a nice little bow.
Yes, they did.
I guess that's it for this series. I enjoyed all the flashbacks. I had forgotten about some of those kills. I really liked seeing Jadis's room and Michonne's reaction to it. All in all, worth the Amazon purchase. I mean, really, when you put it in that perspective, yes, I totally understand. Looking forward to your thoughts. Cheers. Well, there you go. You had our thoughts. That's our thoughts.
Right.
Thoughts are complete.
I did not realize, Karen, that you were having to, buy the episodes on Amazon. That's dedication right there. I'm impressed. Wait, good for you. And again, unlike other shows in the Walking Dead universe that will remain nameless, fear.
Yes.
This one, it was worth it because this was a good show. So
yeah, it was a good bang for your buck there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks for writing in, Karen. We hope to hear from you during Book of Carol as well. And really anything else that we cover, because your feedback's always funny.
Yep, I agree.
All right, so coming up on the podcast, we will probably take a little bit of time. Not sure yet how long. We know what we're going to do next. We're just going to throw it out there, but we're not sure when. But when we're ready, we will let you know. We're sort of inspired by our recent visit to Days of the Dead convention, which was a really heavy Hellraiser cast. A little reunion there, which was fantastic. And yet another edition of Steve has seen a movie a million times and Diana has not seen it once. We are going to cover Hellraiser in exactly that vein.
Just basically to see how the sausage is made here, people. It was after, I think we were at Caddyshack's that night when Diana just casually mentioned that she had never seen Hellraiser. And I was just like, what? and
yet I got to meet all these lovely people.
And she did. But the other thing was, you were intrigued by it. You're like, I kind of want to see it. I want to check it out because of, I think we went to the panel and we listened to them talk about it, and it was a really good panel. And they all of them, I thought, had some really good things to say about the movie and about what it is trying to say. And it kind of got the juices flowing for you. And so you're like, I want to see it. I'm like, absolutely. So we're going to definitely cover at least the original Hellraiser and, maybe part 2 and some of the other ones as well. So that's going to be, I think, our next thing, but like you said, we're not really sure when. But I believe
when we figure out when we're going to do it, we will definitely let you guys know, because we know that's definitely a popular classic flick. We definitely want to get some feedback from all of y'all about that.
And if you want to kind of refresh yourself to it, I believe most of the Hellraiser movies, certainly the original and the second one, they should be on Tubi, which is a Roku free channel. They're commercials, so it'll cut to commercial periodically, but they are available to watch streaming, so you can kind of refresh yourself and go, oh yeah, that's what it was about. So
so that's what's going to come up again on the podcast, and like we said, we'll let you know when we know when it's going to happen, but sooner rather than later, that's for sure.
Yes.
We just finished going to a convention week before, 2 weeks ago. And we're gearing up for in another 3.5 weeks or so. It's going to be C2E2 time here in Chicago.
Yes.
And that'll be a big weekend. It's a large convention. It's so, to me, honestly, the best part about it is the shopping.
Yes.
Really.
The dealer's room you can spend all weekend just going through the dealer's room. There's so many different booths in the artist alley and all that stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah, if you add in doing artist alley as well, it takes a good 2 days really to go through.
Yeah.
If you want to hit every single thing and make sure you saw everything.
Yeah.
So we're gearing up for that. And it's funny because they had been very slow in making announcements, and we were not sure. We're like, we'll go, but are we going to go whole weekend? And so we're hemming and hawing about how many days we want to go, and was there like one big guest that was like, okay, fine, we're buying our ticket, we're going, whatever. And then slowly, like right after those assholes, right after the ticket mailing deadline, they started announcing a bunch of really great people. First, they started with from Hannibal, Mads Mikkelsen is coming, and then they did like a double announcement for Christina Ricci and Christopher Lloyd, who I think it sounds like they're going to try and pair them together for photo ops and probably maybe a panel about Addams Family, I would assume.
I would guess, yes.
Then I spoke last week, I believe it was, when we got the announcement about Tom Skerritt and Veronica Cartwright Clearly going to be talking about Alien, the original Alien, and that's pretty amazing that they're coming. But then within the last few days, they made two really big announcements. One, I'm not sure I've seen an announcement for this one going to a convention ever. But Josh Brolin is coming to C2E2. That's a pretty big get.
That's a big get.
That's
and
really
it's
big
$200 for his autograph.
I know. Oh my God. That's very, very rich.
Yeah.
So we'll probably end up waving to Josh Brolin from afar.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was thinking about it, and it would be great to get his autograph because I do have a Mimic poster, which is Benicio del Toro, not Benicio, but the director Del Toro's debut film, and Josh Brolin is in it, and so I could certainly get him to sign it. But not only is it super expensive money-wise, I would imagine that's like half of the day waiting in line.
Yeah,
to get
standing
to him.
in line and waiting for him would take. That would eat up, and we're planning on probably only going the one day.
One day, right? So I was kind of like, I'm thinking probably not, but it is an amazing get. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and the other thing too is when you get those sort of like convention unicorns like that, if you have some crazy piece of like, Goonies memorabilia or something from No Country for Old Men or Dune for that matter, obviously, he's not someone who goes to conventions a lot. So this is like, he's going to do amazing because people are going to be like, this is my shot. I got to shoot my shot. If I really want, those people that are huge fans of his, they're going to spend that money easily.
You have the Dune fan group and you have the Goonies fan group that alone, that there could be, 10,000 people that'll try and get his autograph. I mean, it's going to, because like you said, this is one of the first shows that I can see him doing here ever. So, he's never been to shows in this area. Maybe he goes to San Diego Comic-Con or New York Comic-Con or something, but never in the Midwest. So, I imagine it'll be, there'll be a bajillion people to see him. So, so good for him.
Good luck. That'll be fun. We'll walk by and wave at the line is what we'll do.
Yes.
And just announced today, what a great get. It's actually going to be her very first appearance at a convention, and it's Maya Hawke from Stranger Things, which is...
Think her dad will bring her?
I don't think so. I think she goes to sting things by herself now since she's
maybe
a
her
grown-ass
mom could
woman.
bring her? You think her mom could bring her? Oh,
no,
okay.
her mom's not bringing her.
You're just no fun.
I listen, you can fantasize about those things, but they're not going to happen. So just Maya Hawke on her own will be there. Calm down. But that's pretty cool. I'll have to. Yeah. I didn't look and see what the costs were going to be just yet.
The Josh Brolin posting, it had the costs right on the image of his like headshot, and with her it did not. So. I'm guessing it's not going to be 200, but it's going to probably be 60, 80, $100, I would imagine.
Yeah, very exciting. She's going to be there both Saturday and Sunday. So it's interesting. They really were sort of treading water for a little while and not making any announcements. And now in the last couple of weeks, it's been one right after the other, after the other, after the other. And, not all of them are ones where I would stand in line and spend money for, but they're still they're big draws, that get people there.
Well, it's like you said, it's from a show that for the longest time, there was nobody going. I mean, there were people going. They were all like comic book artists and writers, which are awesome people to see if you're into the comic books, and lots of like animation voiceover actors. Again, if it's your jam, it's great. But I'm talking about the big guests, the Marvel stars or whatever. Nothing. And then, like you said, all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, it's almost like they've been negotiating and asking people, and they were just not getting confirmations back to where they could say anything until now, so.
And it's always a scheduling thing too. You may have someone on the hook and they're like, well, we don't want to announce until we know for sure, because this is a lot of money for people.
Right. Yeah. So, but it's very exciting.
Yeah, I'll be in the same building as Josh Brolin for a few hours, and really isn't that all you want to say? He'll be behind a couple of curtains, but he'll be right there.
He'll be right there. You just want to do the Atreides salute to him. I know.
I will. I mean, he won't know I'm doing it because he'll be behind a bunch of curtains, like I mentioned, but I'll still do it.
You'll still do it, and it'll be the same thing as him knowing.
So I guess now is our chance, since that's going to happen. What's the over under on how many people will be walking around C2E2 in still suits is really the question.
God, too many.
I know,
and probably people that should not be wearing still suits, and people that don't quite grasp the concept of deodorant will be wearing still suits. So,
yes,
yeah, it could be bad. Yeah,
it could be, but we'll have to. That might need to be our new thing to start counting.
I think it's a good idea
from the anime show. So
yeah. The green checkerboard will move on. I like it.
Yeah. Gotta have new things, new fresh ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, not to be outdone, during the broadcast last night, not the broadcast of Ones Who Live, but to sucker you into watching a new show on AMC, how quite like them. During the first commercial break of the new series with Giancarlo Esposito, it's called Parish. They premiered a longer sort of teaser trailer for Book of Carol. But if you don't want to get suckered into watching a TV show just yet, because you don't know how you feel about it, like, say, me, and you have too many things recording anyway, so it wouldn't have hit it, you just wait until the next day and watch it on YouTube, which is exactly what I did.
There you go. So, yeah, it's on multiple streaming sources now. So, but that was like the first opportunity to see it was on the show. So.
Yes. So it looks really interesting. Still, excited to watch. Love me some Carol. I love, Revenge Carol is always good. She's going to be good.
Well, I'm hoping we get a little bit of Revenge Carol and a little bit of Quasi Carol, because Quasi Carol is super fun.
Yeah. Depends on if she's really stressed out. Maybe she takes a few drugs to stay awake. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's up in the air. It's hard to tell how you never know what kind of Carol you're going to get. That's for sure. So, but still, good trailer. Looking forward to it. And still no definite date yet. Still just saying summer.
It still just says summer. So hopefully in the coming weeks here, we'll get a little more clarity.
A little bit more date clarity. But once we know, we'll let you know. And then you'll know when we're going to start podcasting on it, too. That's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't think of anything else we got to talk about. I think we can wrap this up.
Oh, boy, this was a long one. Yeah, I agree. I think we've done it, people. We've covered Rick and Michonne, and Rick finally got back. And
we did.
I think it's safe. We can all now give that man a hand.
Oh, terrible. The worst.
Would you expect anything less?
No, from you, never.
No, never.
And I hope you folks wouldn't expect anything less from Steve either. You probably know him just as well at this point.
You do.
But we're going to go ahead. That's it, me. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up finally for this week. We look forward to chatting with you again. Again, we'll let you know when we're going to cover Hellraiser, so you know when that next episode is. But until you hear from us again, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve. Bonjour.
Don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because body shots, even with Rick and Michonne, they just don't work. To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTHpodcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, aimfortheheadpodcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed.
Done. Let's close that. And then I don't have to worry about it anymore.
See, this is the kind of stuff that the audience wants to hear, is you talking to yourself.
Me mumbling while I save my draft on Libsyn, and then I just plug in the episode later.
See?
It's so sexy. Like, save that draft. I'll return to that editor later. Yeah, baby.
It's B-roll gold.